Oh, I see. Okay. Now my phone says 5:59. Okay, it is 6 o'clock. I hereby call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission to order. If we could please have the temporary procedures read.
The San Benito County Planning Commission welcomes your comments. Each individual speaker will be limited to a presentation total of 3 minutes. When addressing the commission via Zoom, phone, or in the chambers, please state your name and county in which you reside for the record. Please address the commission as a whole through the chair. If participating on Zoom, select the Participants tab and click the Raise Hand icon. If you are using a phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. When your turn arrives, you will hear that you have been unmuted. If participating in person in the chambers, please complete a speaker card identifying the item on which you wish to speak, and provide your completed card to the clerk prior to consideration of the item. Speaker cards are available on the table at the entrance. Thank you.
Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance, Commissioner Rodriguez, if you could please lead us.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Roll call, please.
Robert Rodriguez, District 1. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Robert J. Rodriguez II, District Number 1.
Present.
Richard Way, District Number 2.
Present.
And Robert Scagliotti, District Number 3, our Vice Chair. He is absent. Robert Gibson, District Number 4, Chair.
Present.
And Devin Pack, District Number 5.
Present.
Okay. We have a quorum. Quit hitting that little button. If I could get an acknowledgement, a certificate of posting, please.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have an acknowledgement. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So ordered. Department announcements.
There are none at this time, Chair.
Public comment. Is there any public comment for any items that are not specifically on this evening's agenda that are under the purview of the Planning Commission? Any general public comment via Zoom?
There is no public comment via Zoom.
Any general public comment in the chambers? And this is for items that are not on the agenda, ma'am? Okay, please come forward.
I need to fill my card really fast, sorry.
Okay.
It's okay. Okay. Okay, so, this is for the lead project. It is on the quorum, so it's on the agenda, so you guys are okay. Is it for the lead project as well? No? Okay, this one is okay. Okay. It's okay. Maureen Nelson? Okay.
Yay, it works. Good evening. Thank you
evening.
for the time. I am with Don't Dump on San Benito, so I just wanted to come and reiterate our stand, knowing that the landfill is coming before you quickly for a vote, and with it at 2,300 tons is what they're asking for. That is the only option, at which point Waste Solutions Group will take the toxic waste out of cell number 1 and take it to Kettleman. At no other point will that toxic waste be removed. So the county should be prepared that we aren't going to have it removed, because we're not going to give them 2,300 tons, nor do they want 2,300 tons. So that was just a ruse to make it look like they're a good citizen partner and to get favor with the county and to get approval for this landfill expansion. The citizens of San Benito County are not happy about having a landfill broadened 5 times the size of what it currently is to serve out-of-county waste stream. There are other opportunities out there for them to take their waste and not to bring it to us. At the last meeting where we talked about the landfill, it was brought up that it should not have the trucks going down Fairview or McCloskey, that they should go down State Route 25. That puts it in everybody's backyard. I think that's a great idea because it makes every citizen in San Benito County aware of the travesty that will happen with 190 truck trips per day in an 8-hour day, every 2.5 minutes. And then we're going to add to that the recycling trucks, which will be another 50 to 100 truck trips per day on their state highway, going through their traffic routes. So I just really implore upon the Planning Commission to think about this before you place your vote on the landfill expansion, and think about what's best. The county has 101 acres across the street for future development that was not used for a resource recovery park. So if in the future we need additional landfill space, we have the land already. We do not need the land that Waste Solutions purchased as a carrot to lure us into a very, very detrimental spiral of waste forever. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And happy holidays.
To you as well. Thank you. Is there any other general public comment?
There is no more general public comment.
Seeing none, public comment is closed. Consent agenda. Is there a motion on the table?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have 2 seconds. Commissioner Pack was first, I believe, so he'll get the honor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Oh. And for some reason, the minutes were not part of that, I guess. Can I get a motion on the minutes if there's not any corrections to the minutes?
I'll make a motion on the minutes.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
A second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Regular agenda. Public hearing.
Mr. Chair, if I may, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, and the board, we would like to have item number 2, which is the Lands of League, come before item number 1 on the agenda. That was our intent since the beginning. However, we're still finding our way around the new program. And so if it's okay with you and the commission, we would like to have Lands of League.
Commissioner Way?
Well, I just want to ask if there's anybody in the chamber who intended to comment on the item that they thought was going to be first, who would not be able to stay for it now that it's being moved to second, or for that matter on Zoom. If not, I certainly have no objection.
Okay. We can go ahead and move it. Switch the items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission.
And before we start the presentation, I would like to say that I have had a phone call with the applicant. I have had a discussion with the applicant after our last meeting here at the dais. I have had a phone call with Mark Medina, and I may have talked with other people that I don't recall. I don't believe so, but you never know. And I will say one more thing for the record, that we had requested special meetings for these items, and I'm not too happy that it got pushed to our regularly scheduled meeting, and I would hope that that doesn't happen in the future. Thank you.
Also, in the spirit of disclosure, I have conducted a site inspection and spoken with the applicant while I was conducting the site inspection at the site of the development project.
And I also participated in the little panel discussion with the applicant right here, after the last meeting. No decisions were made. He was just providing background on some of the history of the road access to sites nearby and that sort of thing. So,
Okay. You have any sins to admit to?
Just say I've spoke with the people as well about the project, just on background.
Okay. Then if you could proceed, please.
Hi. Good evening, Chair and fellow Commissioners. Ariel Goodspeed, Principal Planner here with the county. I'm excited to have the opportunity to go through the Lee subdivision project. I will have Eileen is online. She is a consultant with Rincon and helped prepare the environmental impact report and will be presenting a portion of this presentation, as well as the applicant, Bill Lee, will have some slides as well as the presentation. Is this acceptable to the commission?
Sure.
Excellent. All right, so 291 Old Ranch Road, County File PLN 200051. We'll get right into some of the details. So it's located east of the city Hollister, and access is through Airline Highway 25, and local access is through Fairview Road. So some of the existing development, you have residences and Leal Vineyard to the north, and then residences east and southwest. So Fairview Corners is directly south, and it consists of 60.16 acre parcel that was subdivided into 189 lots at 5,000 and 8,000 square foot lots with 7 open space parcels and 1 designated remainder parcel. The net dwelling units per acre is only 4.3 for the subdivision directly south. Similarly, lands west of Fairview is planned for Roberts Ranch subdivision. And those are 6,000 square foot lot at 192 single-family residences with 49 multifamily. Fairview and 507 and west of Fairview is 507 single-family residences, 60 duets, and 100 multifamily units. And then additionally, between Fairview Corners and Highway 25 is the Galvin Community College San Benito campus. This is a site plan image of the proposed 141 lots. So included as part of the Lee subdivision project is the demolition of the existing on-site residence, barn, septic system, leach field. The subdivision of 141 lots will include 120 1- and 2-story single-family detached units, 20 single-family duets. Of those, 21 units are included as part of the Affordable Housing Agreement Plan that'll be presented later on, as well as 25 ADUs. 25 are not optional; they'll be built with as part of it. And then there is 103 lots total that can support an ADU above those 25 that'll be built. And we'll get into more as we get along. Also included as part of the project description is 1.9 acre public neighborhood park with a 0.5 acre passive open space. We'll get into more of the park plan. Internal roadways and sidewalks and improvements to Old Ranch Road. The proposed utilities, Sunny Slope County Water District will be supplying water as part of the EIR. There were 2 wastewater options proposed. One with option 1 included offsite improvements required along Fairview Road and Ridgemark Golf area from the project site to San Benito County Water District main lift station wastewater treated at the Ridgemark wastewater treatment plant. My apologies, Sunny Slope County Water District. Wastewater 2 connecting to the City of Hollister treatment plant So Sunny Slope County Water District contracts with the city to convey and treat the wastewater, the manhole at Fairview and Old Ranch Road intersection, and wastewater treated at the Hollister Water Reclamation Facility. There will be on-site stormwater improvements, on-site detention basin below the proposed park, and discharge onto on-site drainage, which we'll show an image shortly. And then recycled water future connections for future off-site pipe. So this is the on-site water proposed. This shows infrastructure for both wastewater options, and then it does show option 2, the point of connection Fairview Road, and then on the next slide is additional off-site improvements for wastewater 1. So this is wastewater 1 that shows the new wastewater main to Fairview Road, new lift station, replacing or upsizing pipes in Ridgemark area, and improvements to Sunny Slope County Water District main lift station. Again, both options were analyzed as part of the EIR, and conditions of approval include using one of those 2 proposed wastewater connections. Here is an image of the on-site stormwater infrastructure. So currently, the general plan land use designation has it as residential mixed with a zoning of rural. It's planned, the general plan, and there's no change. The zoning will be upzoned to meet the general plan designation. It'll be residential multiple, and then it'll have planned unit development, or PUD combining district, and I'll get into a little bit of that. So the general plan vision for this area, I know it's been brought up at our EIR workshop, but essentially, per general plan, this area was planned to be zoned residential mix, so 8 to 20 units per acre. The rezoning application brings the project zoning in compliance with the general plan land use designation. It's already designated, and the purpose is really to allow areas of the unincorporated urban uses where circulation and utility service exists, and designation applies to the areas such as the project site that are largely developed and have public infrastructure and services necessary to support the increased density. And the proposed zone change to the residential multiple district with a combined district of planned unit development is allowed for those areas. And again, so this will actually have a higher density than the neighboring, Fairview Corners, which only has like a 5.4 density. This will have an 8.3 density. And then the planned unit development. So the whole purpose of this is basically to provide for public health, safety, general welfare, with increasing urbanization, and encourages innovations in residential mixed-use development, demands that meet a greater variety, type and design of layout dwellings that are more efficient use of open space, create greater opportunities for better housing, more housing options, increased diversity of housing, commercial activities, recreation, encourage more efficient use of land, public services, safeguard open spaces, provide alternative procedures which can relate to type, design, and layout of residential mixed-use development, and particular demand for housing at the time of development in a manner consistent with the preservation of the property values within the established residential areas, and to provide alternative procedure for developer to real property may elect. So what this plan unit overlay combining district provides, it's going to provide open space, it's going to provide clustering of homes to preserve natural features in the creek area, and to stay, away from fault lines and other, features that are not suited for development. It provides connectivity in the form of trails, paths, sidewalks, crossings to adjacent development and to Fairview Avenue crossing. It provides various housing types and mixed use, which we'll get into more. It has a consistent architectural theme, home development through the property, affordable housing consistent with submitted affordable housing plan. We'll get into that. 25 ADUs will be built with the project, with the option to build more within the project. And then additional park improvements far exceeding the standard park requirements as shown below, and we'll get into that as well. So this is the site plan of the PUD, and then I just wanted to provide here also as part of the unit mix and density. So again, overall, it's being consistent with the general plan, and the development standards are relatively staying consistent with the RM zoning. So we did want to take an opportunity to go deeper into the project description and parts of the EIR in response to our EIR workshop that we had on November 2nd, and questions that came, either through comments received or through the planning commissioners. So the first is, let me just get into the recreational amenity. So as part of the PUD, you are required to have a ratio of 5 acres of parkland per 1,000 persons. So doing the math, that parkland requirement would be 2.12 acres. Between the 1.9, we're essentially, the parkland is 1.85, the open space is 0.055, and the proposed park within the development will be 1.905 acres. So we're short essentially 0.22 acres. So with that, they're proposing to pay a fee to meet that requirement. But instead of just providing a fee for that 0.22 acres, they're going above and beyond. So at an estimate market value of around $500,000 per acre, that 0.22 acres would only be worth about $105,000 in park fees, approximately. Actual market value will be determined by the county appraiser. The development instead is going to build out the entire 1.9 acre park shown on the development plan. Roughly those improvements cost of 1.9 acres at $8 a square foot would be around $662,000, rounding to $660,000. It would include drought-tolerant plantings, irrigation, some turf for playing, pathways, view benches, a small play structure. Exact park plans would come as improvement plan during conditions of approval. Design of park has not been started, and so the cost of installing the park would far exceed the $105,000 by approximately $555,000, and these additional improvements of the park would be added as amenity for the PUD and the benefit of the entire community. It was taken to the Parks and Rec Commission for that first review. One of their suggestions had been to bring plumbing up to the park for future extension of use and growth, and we'll touch on that in a minute. So, but essentially, they did recommend approval of this proposed plan, the Parks and Rec Commission. And then I would like to bring up Bill at this time, and he's going to touch on a few more things.
To advance the slides.
Just here.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you. So we wanted to talk about some of the linkage that this project provides. You have a park here, but you also are very close to the Whale Park, which was just expanded. And so you have linkage to get there for pedestrians. And as Ariel just stated, and I don't want to repeat, we are going to spend about $500,000 above and beyond what we would need to pay in an in lieu fee for that little fraction that we're short on land on the park, and fully build the park out. So whereas most projects and the requirement in the county is just to get the land for the park, and then money's got to come out of the county kitty if there is any to build it. This will be fully built out. There's also circulation here, and I think one of the next slides will show it a little bit better, where this connects into the neighborhood to the south, which then connects to Gavilan College. And that's a secondary access for us, and it's a secondary access for the neighborhood and Gavilan College. Without this project, Gavilan College and Dividend Homes will only have one road in and one road out. This is the project directly to the south, and sometimes it's hard to see on the maps the connection, but if you look, you can see at the top middle of the slide that road that's in there. It's a 24-foot fire access road that the project in the south worked out with Charlie Bedoya from Fire. So it's a full 2-lane road, red curb on each side, so there's no parking, is how that works.
So the next section I want to get into is a review of the Affordable Housing Agreement Plan. Under Section 2103.005, essentially all residential developments consisting of 5 or more lots in San Benito County shall provide inclusionary on-site or off-site units, except that a fee may be paid in lieu of providing fractional units or in other circumstances as specified in 2103.008. The qualification for an in lieu payment under 008 is that specific characteristics of the development site, such as lack of access to services. The proposal has to do with lack of alternative transportation methods, no bus service to the location. I'll get into that, and make it difficult for low-income levels to travel outside of the area without using a vehicle. But essentially, that's only one element, is to provide a fee, and I'll get into their plan. Their main proposal is under subsection 2103.008. That you can do in lieu payment or alternative mechanisms for providing the affordable housing, and alternative compliance mechanisms should be used only when they lead to the production of more affordable units than would otherwise be provided on site, while still being consistent with the chapter's other goals. So overall, the proposed affordable housing agreement is essentially an alternative compliance mechanism and incorporates multiple components that overall will lead to the production of more affordable units and a more mix of units. So let me get into a little bit of that. So for subsection C on the in lieu fee and addressing that, so currently our county provides multiple different transit systems. One is a fixed route transit system, which is an established bus stop with set time points where a passenger can walk to the stop before the expected pickup time and then boards the bus. It operates similar to our inter-county service and transit. Best practice is for it to stop located and service offered where we can expect a volume of passengers, such as near commercial developments or institutions like schools. Currently, as of today, in conversation with COG and our transportation planners, the fixed route or bus system has been suspended due to COVID, and they have not yet have it operating again due to a driver shortage. Like this driver shortage is going, I guess, countrywide. There's not enough drivers, and the reinstatement of the fixed route is on hold. Even when we do hopefully reopen our fixed route transit system per the 5-year 2022 short range transit plan that was came out in August of this year. It does not include routes to this project site. I did, in speaking with COG, they said that at some point in the future, if the college, Gavilan College, was ever built out, they may reassess for a stop, but it's not planned in the near 5-year term future. The next route is, or transit system that the county has, it's called our on-demand service system. Again, this project site is not included with our on-demand. In my staff report, I accidentally attached this map to our dial-a-ride, which I'll get to next, and get into that. But essentially, our on-demand, again, this has also been suspended due to driver shortage for the county, but it is a service that where passengers use an app to request a pickup location and time in the next few minutes, where the back-end software determines if the trip request can be accommodated based on the number and location of other requested trips in relation to how many drivers we have out and about. It's, I guess, similar to Uber and Lyft, but with a bus and shared rides. And the service can be added on the back-end software as the agent determines as needed. But again, this service is not available to the county at this time, and when it is available, does not service the project site. The last service that the county offers for transit is a dial-a-ride, and the large purple boundary includes for the dial-a-ride option, and would include the project site. But the dial-a-ride is basically where a passenger calls the dispatch office to schedule pickup time. It has to be done at least one day in advance and location, but the dispatch will negotiate the pickup window based off of the availability of drivers and trying to batch the trip with others that have been requested before them. It's similar to on-demand, but booked with more notice, and you're speaking with a person instead who is trained to batch trips as efficiently as possible. The dial-a-ride service is also regularly evaluated based on expected demand, such as building of homes. Again, due to driver shortage and limitations with the county, this service is very limited currently. It also has limited times of availability, only Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday 9 to 3. Has to be done ahead of time, and there's minutes. Rides are subject to availability, so it's not a guarantee you'll have a ride, and it requires anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour wait time, even when you've scheduled a day or days in advance. So the overall plan that is being proposed is they're going to construct 20 duplex units and one single-family dwelling unit for a total of 21 units, which would meet the 15% on-site deed-restricted for sale units to affordability levels as follows. So 14 units would, or 10% per ordinance, would be the moderate income of 81 to 120% area median income. 7 of the units would be 5% or 5% at workforce housing income limits of 121 to 150%. The workforce housing is intended explicitly for local first responders, teachers, skilled nursing care and assistants, and they'll be deed-restricted. So currently our ordinance has that 5%, or those 7 units would be to low income for sale of 51 to 80% area median income. So that is the deviation from our existing code, not the number of units, but the deed-restricted sales price of those units. In addition, the developer is going to pay $4,500 for each market rate unit of 120 units towards a down payment assistance program. That amount will be collected and divided evenly between the 21 for sale units. It comes out to approximately it was just under $26,000 as down payment assistance per each for sale affordable unit. In addition, the developer is going to provide ADUs to 25 units, and then there's optional ADUs that can be purchased from the buyer on the 26 to 103 lots that can accommodate an ADU. Market rate home buyers could elect to have an ADU constructed with their homes, and these ADUs would be available. Roughly, the one-bedroom ADUs rental price would be around $1,200, $1,500 per month, and would provide additional mix of housing eligibility. This is an exhibit that essentially just shows where those units are going to be located. The duets are in blue. They are mixed grouped through different parts of the subdivision. The one green lot is the one single-family house. And so some of the things when reviewing on-site affordable units that they need to include is, they need to receive building permits, certificate of occupancy, concurrently with the remainder of the residential development as set forth in and except as otherwise provided by the Affordable Housing Agreement. And this is done with the phasing of development as depicted on the next slide. In addition, it has to be compatible to the exterior appearance with the other units in the residential development, and differ to the extent authorized in the Affordable Housing Agreement. And again, this will include the same exterior architectural designs as the rest of the development, be consistent with the rest. It has to have a similar number of bedrooms and market rate homes in which the affordable units are located. The market rate homes range from 3 to 5 bedrooms. The ADUs are 1 bedroom. And the duets and the one single family residence will be three bedrooms. So again, consistent with the code. I am just going to show a few. So this is the duet floor plan downstairs, and then the upstairs has the 3 bedrooms included. This is the plan A3. It's the single family dwelling. It's 1,822 square feet, and it's a single family home, a single story home. This is the next plan, similar in size, plan A4. It's 1,896 square feet and is also a single story. This is plan A5. It's 2,116 square feet, and it is a 2-story. However, the footprint is only around 1,161. This is plan A6. It goes up to 2,608 square feet. It's a 2-story. However, the footprint on the lot's only about 1,400 square feet. This plan is A7, and it goes up. It's the largest plan that has the 3,029 square feet. With a footprint of only around 1,600. However, the optional den that's depicted, that shows den, then the bedroom, then the bathroom, for those 25 units where the ADU will be built, it will be built in. They'll have separate entrances from the front and will not be connected to the ADU to the primary residence. And I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
Yeah, I just want to explain a little bit more the concept on the housing here. We're really trying to take care of what I refer to as the missing middle here. The homes themselves are sized, the fair market homes are sized on the smaller side of what is built in the market. But on the affordable, doing the workforce housing is catching a gap that has traditionally been lost. When you do low and you do moderate and you do fair market, there's a gap in the middle that doesn't get served. And the people that go into that gap are your teachers, your policemen, your firefighters, and your nurses in the community. They don't make enough money to be able to buy the fair market homes, and they make too much to qualify for the subsidized low-income homes. And that's the reason we wanted to do the workforce housing, so that, in particular, we wanted to focus on the teachers here in this community, and Dr. Tenenbaum will probably reference that a little later when he speaks, so that those people could be taken care of. And so when we talk about the missing middle, that's what we're talking about. But at the same time, to take care of the low, we're building ADUs, and those ADUs we don't get to count towards are affordable, the 15% affordable, but they're still there and there's still inventory in the community. And we're going to offer the ADUs on over 100 of the homes, but we're going to guarantee that they're going to be built on at least 25 of them. And those units, as Ariel just said, they'll rent, more in that $1,200 rate. The other thing that we're going to do, which the last big subdivision in this that was approved a couple of years ago did, that's the LECO subdivision, is pay that in lieu fee that generates money that then can be used as down payment assistance. So again, for all the affordable units, the workforce and the moderate. So again, that way it's so hard for people to be able to save that money for a down payment, and getting $26,000 towards their unit will make a huge difference. This is mine too, isn't it?
Yeah. Before you go in, I just wanted to add one last component on the workforce housing. And essentially, back in, I think it was September, the COG approved our new RENA allocation of 5,005 units total for the county, and City of Hollister and City of San Juan Bautista. Of those, we're expected to build 754 units. But in addition to building those units, there was also some policies that were adopted in addition to that, and that included to build workforce housing category of up to 300% and adjust as needed to a higher or lower number based on future information. So although it's not in our current ordinance to include workforce housing, it is going to be a policy that will need to be included in our housing element update and possible future ordinance updates per what COG has adopted for our goals in the future. In addition, workforce housing has a variation of how much area median income that qualifies for. It's technically in the above moderate category, but with limitations. City of Salinas inclusionary ordinance has included workforce housing, and they go from 121 to 160 percent AMI. This is actually more restrictive, so this would is what's being proposed to only go from 121 to 150% AMI. Okay, go ahead.
The improvements on Fairview was something we didn't talk about a whole lot the last time we were here a couple of weeks ago, and wanted to make sure that everybody understood that a left turn lane is being installed on Fairview to service Old Ranch Road for those that are traveling southbound on Fairview Road. That way, any cars that are coming that are going to turn on Old Ranch will not stop the rest of the traffic. Currently, there is no turn lane there. I touched on it just a little bit earlier, but the connectivity, this is the slide that I mentioned that shows much better. You can see the red area that shows that that secondary access for Gavilan College and Fairview corners to have more than one way in and one way out.
So in front of you, one of the items that I put on right before Planning Commission is essentially a letter dated from Monday, November 14th from City of Hollister Fire Department that touched on the question that had been brought up previously on how many access points are needed for development. So in there, 1 or 2 family dwelling residential development. So developments of 1 or 2 family dwellings where the number of dwelling units exceed 30 shall be provided with 2 separate and approved fire apparatus access roads. This project is proposing the 2 and would connect Fairview Corners, and that would then provide the secondary access for Fairview Corners as well. However, there are exceptions, so where there are more than 30 dwelling units on a single public or private fire apparatus access road, and all dwelling units are equipped throughout with an approved automatic sprinkler system in accordance with California Fire Code, access from 2 directions shall not be required. The number of dwelling units on a single fire apparatus access road shall not be increased unless fire apparatus access roads will connect with future development, as determined by the fire code official. So I believe this answers that previous question on exceptions on possibly with the only having a single. So this project again provides 2 access routes, but with the new fire building code, it could be approved with just a single access point. And then I actually will open this up to Eileen with Rincon, and she's going to address the water demand calculations.
Ariel, can I just, Mr. Chair, can I make one just bit of a point of clarification before we go with Rincon? What was stated on the 754 units for the regional housing needs allocations for the county is absolutely correct, but just wanted to clarify that it is not required to be built, but just planned for regarding zoning. So we just want to make sure that we zone for it properly to be able to show that we plan for those numbers of units. Doesn't necessarily have to be required to be built. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, and then I'll open up to Eileen.
Thanks. So a question came up at the previous meeting regarding how water demand was calculated, and we based our calculations in the EIR off of the 2020 Hollister Urban Area Urban Water Management Plan, which was jointly prepared by the Sunny Slope County Water District, City of Hollister, and San Benito County Water District. The plan provides a water demand of 0.33 acre-feet per year per single-family residence, which is based off of historical water consumption data and does not include adjustments for water use reductions. The plan also provides an average of 116.5 gallons per capita per day for the plan area. Next slide. The plan includes an assumption of development on the project site of 137 units, meaning that 29 units were not accounted for. And when we calculate that 29 units, it's a conservative assumption in the EIR. We're saying 141 residential lots plus 25 units to get that 166 number. So the EIR used the 116.5 gallons per capita water demand rate, which resulted in a conservative estimate of 0.43 acre-feet per year for the project's water demand. And water demand estimates we included were conservative, and the plan indicates that sufficient water supplies are available based on basin-wide inflow and outflow data. This is described in Impact UTIL-2 of the draft EIR, and impacts were determined to be less than significant.
So one of the things that was talked about at the last meeting is that traditionally homes use 1 acre foot per home per year. And the data you just heard is based on 1/3 of an acre foot a year. We actually contacted Sunny Slope County Water District, and that's actually how much Santana Ranch properties are using. These lots will be a little bit smaller. They'll have a little bit less landscaping, and there'll be more water-saving fixtures in these because of them being newer technology. So we'll probably actually use less water even than that. The other thing, besides controlling how much water is used, the recycled water, that last item on there. every lot will be plumbed for recycled water in addition to the park. So when recycled water does become available, that water consumption will go down even further. Another issue that came up at the last meeting was privacy for the neighbors. There are 3 neighboring residential properties, one to the north and 2 to the west. And we talked to staff, and they said that we are allowed to construct 8-foot fences. And so we've agreed to construct 8-foot fences along those property lines, that's what's marked in green, in order to try to provide greater privacy for those neighbors. Another item that came up at the last meeting was the need for a new high school here in the county. It's no secret that the school is full, and there's still more homes that are under construction, and the school is actually overfull. We have struck an agreement with the San Benito High School District to voluntarily provide them with a bunch of additional money above and beyond the fees that they're normally entitled to collect, so that they can in turn help finance a new school. A new school is going to be very costly. They're going to need to get money from a lot of different places, and what our intention is in doing this is not just our dollars to go to this, but to set a precedent that any future projects will follow suit. And in just a little bit, Dr. Sean Tenenbaum, who's here from the high school, will speak to that a little bit more. But we think that that is a tremendous benefit for the community that we bring out of this project.
So just to recap the project objectives, it's to create an environmentally sound community that supports livability and quality of life. Reduce the pressure of residential development on prime farmlands and farmlands of statewide importance. Provide balanced approach to land use, accommodate future growth, protects community assets, meets affordability requirements, protects environmental resources. Provide a mix of residential housing types that'll meet the needs of affordable to various household sizes, unit types, income levels, including our local county workforce, teachers, emergency workers, nurses, others. Provide a mixed income community by including deed-restricted affordable housing at the county's required levels throughout the project. Provide efficient development standards in combination with respecting the environmental hazards on the project site, including seismic zones, slopes, and natural resources. Provide a circulation network that promotes both safe and quiet neighborhood and enables the county's circulation emergency service goals in this portion of the county. Improves existing Old Ranch Road to county standards and dedicates it to the county. Provides convenient on-street pedestrian facilities and shared travel lanes for bicycles to promote outdoor activity, including connection to Fairview Corner Street, sidewalk, and trail network, and thereby providing connectivity for walking, bicycling to the future Gavilan College Hollister campus. Provide stormwater infiltration. Provide cohesive and integrated land uses and infrastructure in proximity to existing utilities and infrastructure. Provide for park facilities, both informal and informal, to meet a variety of activities and needs. Locate a new public park in the area both adjacent to the residences and offers views and a vista point to provide both physical visual amenities to the residents. Connect to Fairview Corners utilities. Extend the county's non-potable water main to provide sustainable park irrigation from a connection point at the project site's southerly boundary, and provide for emergency overland stormwater release from the northeast portion of the Fairview Corners project. And I will turn it over to Eileen.
Thanks. So I'll talk about the environmental review process. Environmental review is required by the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. The intent of CEQA is to provide information to decision makers and the public regarding the environmental impacts of a project, identify ways to mitigate or avoid those impacts, and identify and evaluate alternatives to a proposed project. Next slide. So this slide gives an overview of the environmental review process for an environmental impact report, or EIR. The process includes the publication of a notice of preparation, draft EIR, and final EIR, and includes 2 public comment periods. The final EIR includes responses to comments received on the draft EIR. Once published, the lead agency makes a decision on the project. For the Lee subdivision project, we're on this final step. The notice of preparation was circulated from February 22nd to March 24th of this year, and the draft EIR was circulated from August 26th to October 10th. The final EIR was released on November 4th. The draft EIR evaluated the following environmental issues in detail in sections 4.1 through 4.9, air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, greenhouse gas emissions, noise, transportation, tribal cultural resources, and utilities and service systems. Section 4.10 of the draft EIR, the effects found not to be significant section, evaluated the remaining environmental topics, which are listed here. Impacts that required mitigation in the EIR included air quality related to toxic air contaminant emissions, biological resources related to special status plants and animals and wetlands, cultural resources related to unanticipated archaeological resources, geology and soils related to paleontological resources, noise related to off-site construction under wastewater option 1, transportation related to vehicle miles traveled or VMT, and finally, tribal cultural resources related to unanticipated discovery of such resources. The EIR identified one significant and unavoidable impact related to transportation and VMT under both project and cumulative conditions. The threshold used was 19.6 VMT per capita, which is a 15% below the existing VMT of the region. The project would result in 21.3 VMT per capita, therefore an 8% reduction in the project-generated VMT was needed. Mitigation measure TRA-2 would only reduce VMT by 1.5%, which does not meet the reduction needed, and no additional mitigation was feasible. Therefore, this impact remains significant. The EIR evaluated 3 project alternatives, including the required no project alternative, a reduced density alternative, which would develop 106 residential lots, reducing the proposed density by approximately 25%, and a higher density alternative, which would develop 212 residential lots and have a greater number of affordable units. Alternative 2 was identified as the environmentally superior alternative, but it would not meet all project objectives to the same extent as the proposed project. Common comments and issues identified that were addressed in the final EIR include off-site improvements related to wastewater option 1, traffic safety, including potential improvements to the Old Ranch Road and Fairview Road intersection, increased traffic congestion, water supply availability, and impacts to local schools.
So as part of what the Planning Commission will be considering here tonight, in order to adopt and certify the EIR, you'll also need to adopt a statement of overriding consideration. So lead agency approves the project which rules on significant effects that are identified in the AR but are not avoided or lessened to a less than significant level. The traffic impacts that were identified for BMT. The lead agency shall state in writing the specific reasons to support its action based on the final EIR and other information as part of the record. So the county must make specific findings supporting the reasoning for such an approval, and CEQA requires the decision-making agency to balance as applicable economic, legal, social, technological, or other benefits of a proposed project against its unavoidable environmental impacts, i.e. the traffic impacts, when determining whether to approve the project. If the specific economic, legal, social, technological, or other benefits of a proposed project outweigh the unavoidable adverse environmental effects, that adverse environmental effect may be considered acceptable and the project may be approved. The findings that were made and included as part of the packet include these 5. 1, it generates a positive net tax revenue for property tax. 2, it generates temporary employment opportunities, construction related jobs. 3, it constructs new housing, 141 residential lots, 25 ADUs, 21 affordable units. It provides recreational benefits, the 1.9 acre neighborhood park and the 0.5 acre open space area. And 5, traffic and circulation. Payment of fair share fees, the county traffic impact fee fund, improvements to Old Ranch Road right-of-way, pedestrian crossing at Old Ranch Road and Fairview Road, and unified development of the area consistent with planned unit development. On your dais, you'll see 2 comment letters that were received after publishing the packet. One is from Mark Medina. He's a previous San Benito County Supervisor for District 1 for 5 years, and the other is Zeke Lopez, the owner of Bulldog Boxing Gym. In addition, you also will see a revision to the conditions of approval, Exhibit C to resolution. Most of them are just text edits for clarity to recordation, multiple final maps, parkland dedication, public works conditions, environmental health conditions, and site and soap conditions, just minor text edits for clarity. There is multiple conditions that were removed for public works conditions due to them being duplicative. And I do have our county engineer and Assistant Director of Public Works, Steve, who can answer any of those particular questions you may have. And there was the addition of one following condition that was presented, and it had to do with the privacy fence, that on the improvement plans, they would put 8-foot privacy fence on the borders of lots 1 to 7 at 131 Old Ranch Road, and lots 122 to 141 that are adjacent to the property 130 Old Ranch Road, and then also 8-foot on lots 8 through 12, which are adjacent to the Leal property at 200 Maranatha Drives. Staff is now rounding the end of our presentation and recommending certification of the EIR that evaluates the impacts of the development under the subdivision project, prepared per CEQA and CEQA guidelines, adopt findings required by CEQA, adopt mitigation measures to reduce any significant environmental impacts where feasible. As for recommend the EIR adopt a mitigation monitoring and reporting plan and adopt a statement of overriding considerations. In addition, adopt a vesting tentative subdivision map with revised conditions of approval recommended by staff, subject to the Board of Supervisors approving the zone change and the planned unit development combining district. Finally, recommend to the Board of Supervisors the zone change and the planned unit development combining district and the affordable housing agreement plan for approval. That concludes my presentation this evening, and I am happy to take any questions.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions at this time regarding the presentation of the project? Before we go to public comment, any questions?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okie dokie. Then, okay. Fantastic. We're going to hold our questions till after public comment. Is there any public comment via Zoom?
Yes, there is. Mark Medina, you are unmuted.
We'll give him 1 minute.
You can unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you for that 1 minute, sir. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, good evening, esteemed planning commissioners. My name is Mark Medina, and I was a resident of San Benito County for many decades. And I also sat on the San Benito County Board of Supervisors for approximately 5 years. I've always been and I will continue to be an advocate of the property rights. So in my humble opinion, I feel the Lee subdivision project would benefit the middle housing inventory. This project has been in the works for many, many, many years. And this project will benefit the average consumer, as the largest house is smaller than the smallest house currently being built at the Ridgemont Bluffs project. We need smaller home footprints, which is the reason why these would be affordable. As I understand, this project provides 15% affordable housing, and the project will offer your ADUs throughout the project, with 25 being guaranteed. In the past decades, we've had developers that would dictate what they would do for us. And hearing throughout the months and days, especially today, I believe it's the other way around. The county is receiving what they want and what they have said in the past for this development. One of the hardest issues is the lack of water throughout the county and specifically the state. But we all know the state does a poor job in water management, and the state does waste a lot of water haphazardly. But that's not for us to discuss at this point. The other side of the coin is we do need affordable housing in San Benito County. And affordable housing, I'm not referring to low income, I'm referring to the middle, where a lot of people aren't able to buy houses in Santana Ranch or Hidden Valley or Ridgemark. So I feel housing of this type would benefit this county greatly. In closing, I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak. And secondly, the whole idea here is for the commissioners, the planning commissioners, to ask what the developer can do for you, not what the developer can do for his or herself. Thank you very much, and have a great night. Appreciate the time to talk. Thank you.
Okay, Valerie Eglin. You have been unmuted. You can unmute yourself.
There you go.
Okay.
Unmute. Thank you very much. Yes, this is Valerie Eglin, San Juan Bautista. I was on the planning commission when Bill Lee brought this project forward. And it was about the same time as the Gavilan project was being discussed a lot and brought forward. And the connectivity for bicycling and pedestrian access through all the communities on that side, I think has been well evidenced, and that Bill Lee has provided a lot that will enhance the experience of students and faculty from Gavilan. It will not be a totally separated kind of housing area, that teachers, students with the AUDs, this would be, to me, an extremely good project there. And I applaud all the efforts that Bill Lee has put together in designing it for public access. And the parks element, I think, has been addressed quite well, and all the parks around considered well. There will be walking paths on the Gavilan campus on that side that the connectivity will be very welcomed. So that's my opinion, and thank you.
Jamila, you can unmute yourself.
Good evening, Jamila Saka, resident of the city of Hollister. My one comment that I have is related to the qualification for the in lieu fee payment. I disagree that there is a lack of bus transportation service to the area, though it is currently suspended due to lack of drivers, and that the only available option is a dial a ride option at this time. There still is a service. There still is something that is available for the future residents there. And I believe that low income units should be included in this development as part of the requirement of the ordinance. At this time, if Planning Commission moves forward and chooses to not include that as part of the development, I would recommend and suggest to increase the minimal in lieu fee amount and look at the $30 square footage in lieu fee amount that the board previously approved as a way to supplement the expense of the down payment assistance program. And so that would be my suggestion, recommendation, is to either include the low income units as part of the development, and then also look at the $30 square foot in lieu fee payment. And that is all. Thank you for your time.
Elia Salinas, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good evening. Chair, Commissioner, and Commissioners. I totally agree with the comments that were previously made by former Supervisor Mark Medina and Planning Commissioner Valerie Eglin. This is a great project, more into the favor of what it could do for Gavilan College, more what it can do actually setting precedents with regards to actually having firefighters, nurses, police officers being able to afford homes in the place where they live. Right now, firefighters and police officers are driving over 152 to come to work. Teachers are not able to afford homes, and this is a great incentive for them to actually be able to afford to buy a home here in San Benito County. I think it's a great idea, and it's a great the fact that Bill Lee and Michelle Lee are the kind of people that are always doing something for the community to pay something forward. This is even going more forward with it, with the fact that they can actually financially, people are going to be assisted to be able to buy a home. And that is not something that is currently happening in San Benito County. It's possibly that this is setting a precedent, and other developers are going to be able to do something like that. Gavilan College is very important to me. We're talking about $292 million on the last bond, and it needs to go forward. And the fact that this developer, as well as Dividend Homes, will be able to help Gavilan with water and sewer and having ingress egress. I was shocked to find out that the state did not require Gavilan to have 2 ingress egress. I mean, an emergency, anything that can happen. And now these 2 developers are offering to be able to allow that and make sure that our students, our teachers, and all the employees there at Gavilan College are going to have a safe secondary access to get in or to get out. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Irma Gonzalez, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name, as you said, is Irma Gonzalez. I'm the Gavilan College trustee for Area 7, and this is the area that the project is located on. And I'm here speaking in support of the project. And I agree also with the previous comments that have been made, so I'll try not to repeat them. One of the things that I'd like to bring to your attention is when you have a residential housing near a community college, it's a benefit in a number of ways for the college. Our student enrollment is based upon, our funding is based upon our student enrollment. Having the college nearby in a residential neighborhood will make it easier for the young and the older students to re-enroll and attend. It's within walking distance. Having the neighborhood attend the nearby college will help increase our student enrollment, full-time equivalent students, which is where our student-centered funding is based. And of note, in 2024, 2025, we will be off the student-centered formula and off basic aid. And that means that our enrollment will be a bigger factor in our funding and our success. So having it in the neighborhood, having the homes there will make it easier for the college to reach the 500 full-time equivalent students that are needed in order to petition the chancellor's office for approval to expand to a full college, which is our goal, to have a full college. Also of importance to me is that the project builds 15% affordable housing by building the 21 deed restricted units that will be sold below cost to the folks that otherwise would not be able to afford it. That's something that will benefit our faculty. And having it available to our faculty, I think, is extreme importance. It's something that our students can also benefit from because they will be within walking distance. Again, I'm trying not to repeat everything everybody said. So I just learned of the secondary access road, and I think that is something that is important. I wasn't aware of it in the past. So I'd like to thank Mr. Lee for including that. And again, in closing, I ask that you please approve the project. It's something that would benefit our community. It will definitely benefit my faculty and our students. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
There's no more public comment on Zoom at this time.
Okay, if we can start with public comment in the chambers, please. If you could read off the cards.
Sean Tenenbaum, he's the San Benito High School superintendent.
Well, good evening, commissioners. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, perfect. Good evening, staff, audience members. My name is Dr. Sean Tenenbaum, the superintendent of San Benito High School District here in Hollister. It is a privilege to be with you this evening as I share a few words on behalf of Mr. Bill Lee and the Land of Lee project. First and foremost, the San Benito High School District fully supports the Lands of Lee project. As you are aware, the district is required to accommodate students from new residential development, even though Hollister High School is over capacity. Mr. Lee is the first member of the development community to help the district address the community's most pressing educational need, delivering a second high school. Mr. Lee has voluntarily, agreed to pay a greater developer fee than what is required by law. He has also agreed that the district's teachers and employees will have the first right of refusal on the purchase of affordable homes. Furthermore, Mr. Lee is also working with the district to cultivate relationships with building partners and the Community Foundation. All of Mr. Lee's contributions come by way of cooperative partnership that not only serves as a pilot program for our community, but also as a catalyst for future partnerships. Once again, the San Benito High School District fully supports the project. We hope the Planning Commission is equally supportive. The Planning Commission, the county, and its advisory commission should expect all residential developers to emulate the collaborative spirit of Mr. Bill Lee. The district's partnership with the Lands of Lee project is a great starting point for our community. Without the full cooperation of the Planning Commission, the county, and the city of Hollister, additional agreements will be difficult to obtain. In closing, the San Benito High School District would like to thank Mr. Lee and ask for your support in supporting his project while also assisting the district in obtaining similar agreements. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mary Anderson, you can approach the podium.
Hi, good evening. So my residence is on the, we share the property line of the Lee project. And my request is that, one, is there a date where Dividend Homes is actually going to break ground and start their project, to where the Lee project is in reference to a secondary, access and this sort of thing, and pathways, sidewalks, blah, blah, blah. But if the Dividend project is not going to happen anytime soon, that changes the presentation of the Lee project as far as, the things that it's also offering dependent upon the Dividend Homes. Secondary is that I'd like the Planning Commission to consider more open space on the bordering neighbor properties instead of having homes directly on those property lines, to provide a little bit more area between the existing homes and existing Leal Winery to prevent future problems with noise complaints and that sort of thing. Secondary is any solar requirement on these new homes going to be a requirement of the developer to help reduce the PG&E costs? And if there was any provision for construction noise during the time that these homes are being built. I know that the neighbors across the street had filed complaints of listening to a nail gun for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So they had to resort to the homes being built on those property lines, had to go back to using, I guess, regular hammers, and they weren't real happy about that because they're used to using the nail guns to be more efficient. The other thing would be, is there a traffic signal actually going in at Fairview and Old Ranch, or is it a flashing signal? We're talking about crosswalks. Nobody wants to cross that street without some sort of protection for a pedestrian. As it is right now, the speeds of the traffic are excessive. And if there's a possibility of using more open space and reducing the amount of homes that are built on those property lines in consideration of the existing neighbors. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina Watt, you can approach the podium.
Good evening, Chairman Gibson, Planning Commissioners, staff, my neighbors. My name is Christina Chavez Wyatt. I'm a resident of San Benito County. I reside in the Sunny Slope Fairview airline area, and my in-laws are residents of Richmark. I'm here to speak in support of the Lee family proposal. I've had a great deal of pleasure working with Bill on economic development and in support of Martha's Kitchen, feeding our needy neighborhoods with our neighbors within the region. We do need housing, more housing in our community of all types. One of the biggest pain points of our businesses, especially those in agriculture and manufacturing, which comprise 28% of our local jobs, we need more homes for them, affordable homes, for our schools, for our local governments, for our growing hospital. We simply don't have enough housing or a selection of housing types. Even market rate units are considered affordable by design for the smaller units, and also in consideration of the addition of the ADUs, which also provide a multi-generational housing opportunity, because we're going to be in the position, as we are now, of bringing our parents home, grandparents home with us. This proposal may be considered to be placed in an area that's considered infill because of the development and the proposal around the region. It really does fit like a puzzle piece. As a parent, I'm especially cognizant and mindful of the need for new infrastructure in the region, parks, walking areas, roadway connections, but most notably trying to work with regional wastewater options, option 2, specifically to take in the additional capacity. It was built to take on the capacity for new homes. Additionally, this will also possibly facilitate the removal of the Cielo Vista small wastewater plant, the Ridgemark plant, and for connection for Fairview Corners and the future Gavilan San Benito campus. Thank you very much for your consideration tonight.
Thank you.
Elvira Robinson.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be in front of the Planning Commission. I rarely come out and speak publicly like this. I'm an attorney here in Hollister. I've been a lawyer over 40 years and a resident here over 35 years. And I sat on the board at Gavilan College for 20 years when we purchased the property, and now I'm the chair of the Measure X Oversight Committee that's going to oversee the $59 million to begin this beautiful project. And so I want to state that I totally am in support of the Lee project. It's an exceptional project. It would go hand in hand with Gavilan College, with the students, with the teachers, the housing, and particularly because we would have another access road. Right now we would only have one, and this would provide that second one that's so vital for our students and our staff if there's an emergency need for another exit. I don't want to repeat everything else that you've heard over and over and over, but I totally support this project and Mr. Lee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seth Caprone, you can approach the podium.
Thank you, Chair Gibson and Commissioners. I think Chair Gibson is aware I've been involved in the creation of the Affordable Housing Ordinance since it was first brought up, spoke before the Planning Commission and the board, attended all the ad hoc committee meetings. I'm now a member of the Advisory Council, Housing Advisory Council for the county. And I have some concerns about the affordability agreement that's being proposed, and I hope you guys will look at that in considering this proposal. Throughout the process, one of the main perspectives I've had is, as we create exceptions to the ordinance, we want to make sure that projects that are coming forward don't propose to eliminate low-income housing and replace it with moderate or median income housing, which is exactly what this affordability agreement proposes. I don't believe that it meets the letter or the spirit of our ordinance. The rationale that this is not appropriate for low-income families because there isn't public transportation. I'm helping with a 24-unit low and very low-income project that's a little further out of town on South Side Road. I can assure you that all of those low-income families drive cars and don't need public transportation. Low income in our county does not mean poverty level. You know, we have a pretty high median income. The in lieu payments here, normally the in lieu payment would go to the county to disperse as they saw fit for affordable housing. Here it's being proposed that it would be used for down payment assistance. A big percentage of that, which would be going not for low income or even moderate income homes, but would be going, or median, moderate income homes, but would be going for workforce housing. And I think everybody agrees we have a desperate need for workforce housing, and no one would argue with that. And I think, you know, we need to look for strategies. This project has a lot going for it. The smaller lots, I think, is something we need to be looking at in our zoning ordinance in general to get builders to build smaller homes on smaller lots, which is what's happening here. But I believe that these workforce houses, building a duplex on a small lot like that, could probably be built at a profit and could be part of a project and not displacing the low-income homes that are being taken out here. The ADUs, in the work of the Affordable Housing Committee, we recommended those not be included as affordable units because there's no deed restrictions. There's no guarantee that they won't just be used as a bonus room or extra space for the homeowners. And there's no control over what the rents that would be charged. So there's no guarantee that those are really going to be available for low-income residents. The subsidy.
Thank you.
Okay, Ray Pierce, you can approach the podium.
I'm basically in favor of the project as long as there is a one change, and that's the interconnectivity of this project with any project that would be on the north boundary. That's in the Parks Master Plan. That was in part of the general plan. When the Parks group got together, they said we need connectivity between projects, not through the project out to the main drag and then down. We need at least a pedestrian access way. And the secondary access that he's proposing here, that was forced by the Planning Commission prior to you as an access way. It has actually started out as a pedestrian access, and then it was moved into something broader than that. And that's when there was no proposal of development on that land or anything else. The other thing too, what Abraham will be really bright about doing is this workforce housing. Really, it is an opportunity for the county to recruit, because workforce housing for existing firefighters, policemen, and stuff that have been around for a while, they probably are not going to qualify in the price range. But all of the new people that you're trying to recruit in and keep here, then that would be a perfect boon for the county to be able to do that. But of course, workforce housing, you can't just isolate one group and say we're only going to provide for one group. Somebody said something about a first right of refusal. I don't know if that was on a particular housing style, but that would be a lawsuit. So, anyone within that price range of workforce housing, they all fall under the same thing, but the county at the same time could really get on the ball and expedite that for recruitment to bring new people in. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And you might check the documents on that, because I'm pretty sure that would make this project illegal for non-connectivity. Okay?
Thank you.
There's no more comment card. Oh, there's one. Oh, you don't need it. Thank you.
If I may, really quickly, I just want to provide some clarification on the comments that have been made. There is actually a stub on the property to the parcel that's not being developed, and that then in turn would be able to connect to Maranatha or connect to Best Road through the parcel behind it. So that's actually been contemplated, what Mr. Pierce spoke of. The way the lay of the land is, it doesn't really work very well on the upper part in the north to do the connection. It makes more sense to go through the east and then connect around. As far as the affordable housing, when I started this project, which was many, many years ago, Harry was still the RMA director, and he was the one that advised me to take this approach. The approach that we're doing was actually first proposed by the last project that went through the county of any size. That was a couple of years ago. That was the LECO project. And that's where this whole in lieu idea came about. If you're a school teacher and you don't qualify for the market rate and you make too much to qualify for the low income or the affordable, having that $26,000 towards a down payment is, in excess of 5%. So that's a big deal to be able to provide to people. And I think there was some confusion. It's intended to be workforce housing. We would like to work with the county to be able to give the category of teachers a first shot at it. I don't know that first right of refusal is the right word, but we obviously have to work within whatever system the county generates. And if it, and police and firefighters and all nurses are also entitled to get a shot at this. I've tried to listen to what the community's wanted for years, and that's what I've tried to design here. I'm sure no project's completely perfect, but I've talked to several former county supervisors, not just Mr. Medina who spoke earlier, but others who've said, oh my gosh, this is what we've always wanted and you've got it proposed. So I'd really encourage you and ask you to take a hard look at approving this tonight. Because we've done so many things with the smaller units and the workforce housing. I mean, you're looking at revising your affordable housing program in order to include workforce, and you've got that opportunity here to get some units on that tonight. We've addressed recycled water to every property. We're going to be the first to do that. We've got this extra money going to the high school to set a precedent for all these other builders that go behind us. We've really, this isn't the most lucrative project by the time we've done all these things, but it is a good project for San Benito County. I've been here for more than 3 decades, raised my kids here, and want to do something that benefits everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other hands raised on Zoom before we close it out?
There are no more hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, public comment is closed. Commissioners, do you have any comments, questions, concerns?
Well, first of all, yes, on the questions. Mr. Loop, could you speak to us about what the planned lights are and pedestrian crossing for Fairview Road? Is that going to be a flashing light or a stop light, or well, there's going to be a left turn lane, but
yes, Commissioner, regarding the crossing on Fairview, we likely won't be moving forward with that, in my opinion, because of the speeds we're experiencing on Fairview today. So a safer route would be when Fairview Corners is constructed and the connectivity is made, when Fairview Corners and Gavilan College are developed and Fairview Corners hits the 135th building unit, then we'll be analyzing signal warrants. And so it's likely, it's not for sure, but it's likely there'll be a signal at the Cielo Vista connection with the Fairview Corners project, and that'll be the safer crossing that we would recommend for Fairview Road at this time with the speeds experienced on Fairview Road. So.
okay.
Is that?
I have a question.
Robert has a question.
Yeah, well, okay. Steve, could you approach again?
Yes, sir. Commissioner.
On Fairview Road, the striping behind Roberts Ranch on the west, there's striping that is at an angle. Why is that?
So until when frontages are developed, until the lanes are connected and utilized, we just stripe off the lanes so that they're not utilized by cars. It looks like the area where there's the extra lane, essentially. Yeah. You also see that on Santana Ranch northbound. As you're exiting past Santana Ranch, you'll see a similar diagonal striping. So
Don't go too far. Since we're talking about Fairview, what improvements are being made by the college and the developer at that intersection?
So once again, they will also be installing a left-hand turn pocket, and again, it's likely, but we have to do a warrant analysis that when they're approximately halfway constructed on Fairview corners, they will be we'll do analysis and install the signal. For the college itself, I don't recall the requirements as far as that intersection, but there'll be 4 lanes each direction. There'll be a turn pocket in the middle, so there'll be a 5th lane, if that answers your question, for a turn pocket coming into the site. So.
Okay, that does.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Back to Commissioner Pack.
Well, not necessarily further questions, but
okay.
from the public comments, it's my understanding that there have been roughly 5 or 6 conditions that have been suggested by various members of the public. Do we want to discuss those possible conditions?
Perhaps after we go through all the questions and we kick around what we're going to do with this tonight. Commissioner Way.
Yeah, more of a comment than a question. With regard to the park, and I appreciate the fact that you're building it out, and that's a good thing, assuming that this gets approved. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go by Frank Clower Park here in Hollister, a city park. It was recently upgraded to accommodate ADA much more so than what had been there. And I would encourage you to at least look at that as a possibility. I don't know, obviously what the additional cost in doing something like that is, but it's a great improvement, and it really makes a difference for the kids who actually. I know of one, actually, my step grandson, who makes use of that park and makes really good use of it as a result of those upgrades. So that's all I wanted to point out.
Okay. Commissioner Rodriguez. No other questions?
No.
Oh, okay. So other than going through the entire comment and response section, which we may end up at this point, I have a question. Why wasn't the buffer around the vineyard property and the 5-acre zoned properties? To me, if you own the 5 acres, you may or may not have animals, the current owners, and the future owners may or may not have animals. And we're putting backyards right up to that. And then you have a vineyard and you tend to spray vineyards. It does not make any sense to me. And I would love an explanation of why that is.
I will open it up to the applicant and/or engineer on. Would you like to answer it? Currently, we're using the 8-foot fence as the buffer and not a green space buffer. But
And that's the explanation.
do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on this for almost 3 years with the county, and actually that had not come up until just tonight. And with regard to the vineyard, there's only 2 lots that actually get anywhere near his vines. The other lots actually back up to his residence. And those vines are the ones that he doesn't even net because they're on the hillside and just uses them for decoration for the event center. So he doesn't run I don't believe he runs his tractors through there spraying on that one section.
Interesting.
It's fairly steep. I'm not sure if he hand harvests or just doesn't even harvest on that. I know he does not net it. It's only about 1 acre in that section. And if you've been to the event center, and there's a pond, and there's vines that go up the hill there towards his house, and that's the section. Like I said, there's only 2 lots there, and we are going to do the 8-foot fences to try to create some privacy for the neighbors.
Okay.
It is an RM zone, or it is in the RM, and it's our understanding that the long-term intention of the county is to develop these areas more densely.
Do you know if he harvests those grapes?
I don't know if he harvests them.
Because if you harvest them, you spray them. That there's just no way around that. Otherwise, the bugs will have their way with them, and you won't have to worry about your producing wine.
I know in past years that he's told me he doesn't net and he kind of sacrifices those. So I imagine that, the birds get a good chunk of those.
Okay, thank you. The fire department. So we received a letter or a memorandum, but that doesn't answer why Lico Greco had to put in 3 points of access, and this one is okay with 1 if the other development doesn't go through. This doesn't answer that. I would like to hear from the fire chief from Marshall and have them explain what the difference is, because it doesn't seem like the rules are the rules, and I am not happy.
My understanding is that the that the houses that were built next to Lico are not sprinklered, and so that's why there was an increased need of access points there. And I believe it's just one access into that subdivision. Oak Creek, thank you.
Okay, so because the adjacent development that's been there for a little while doesn't have sprinklers, that requires this project to add an extra point of ingress and egress?
That's my understanding, yes.
Interesting, okay.
The sprinklering requirement decreases the need for additional access points.
Chief Bedoya will be logging in shortly.
Oh,
as well.
fantastic. And then how affordable is affordable? We're saying these are affordable, but nothing has been mentioned about what affordable is. What does a teacher or a firefighter or a law enforcement officer make, and can they actually afford to buy one of these market rate units? Because if it's $700,000, is that truly affordable? Or are we just saying it is? I'm curious, because Silicon Valley does impact us, and they might swoop and buy them all up if this were to be approved, because the other people can't afford to actually buy them. So I would like to hear what's based on reality and not nice thoughts.
Actually, in our next presentation, we did have a breakout of what workforce housing would be, what the payment would be, what the house price would look like.
Wow.
And I can bring that up.
That would be fantastic.
And then if we can bring it up on the screen. So you might see this graph twice tonight. But in here, basing it on the 121 to 150 area median income, that would amount to a sales price of about $562,000. Then the down payment of around $26,000, so a loan amount of about $535,000, and that would come out to roughly a monthly affordable housing cost of around just shy of $4,300 payment. And that's maximum. That's on the maximum scale of the 150, not the lower 121.
Okay.
So.
And so
Yeah,
to
minimum.
follow
we'll bring
up
up
with
the
that,
other example as well.
I would love to hear from somebody in real estate. Is that something that somebody that's a sheriff's deputy or a teacher at one of our illustrious schools or a nurse at our hospital, can they actually afford to buy that? Or is that not accurate? We shouldn't call it the missing middle if it really isn't.
So was that a rhetorical question?
No, that wasn't rhetorical.
This is my.
Please.
Okay. And then I also have the lower range example of the closer to the 121. It'd be a sales price of around 460, loan amount of 434, and wait, it's still coming out to 42? No, 35. Sorry, my apologies.
Thank you.
So I think some of my numbers are a little different than hers. The average income for San Benito County just went to 211,000 or 211,000. So you'd have to look at what the price point is for what the payout is for the different. That's why I said it's a great recruiting tool. So what we found is nurses, no, they make too much money. They're not even going to get in and qualify at all, because what the workforce is a percentage below the bottom of the medium income. So it'd be like 30% low. And then in order to keep arenas, you'd have to deed restrict it. So when they sold it, they'd have to sell it at that percentage below, same percentage below what they bought it for. So if it was 30% below, then later on, if they made like 200,000, that 30% below the market would still have to apply. Okay, so that works there. Teachers, yeah. Mostly what I'm talking is recruiters, because they're beginning, their salaries aren't up yet, their bonuses aren't up. Some firefighters, some police, depending on what the salary base is, though. But as far as the price point goes, I think if you're going to put them out on the market for $5, you give it to me. I can sell them all day long for $500,000. Okay, because the average price in San Benito County for housing currently is probably between, the low end is probably $650 or right around in there.
Okay, I'm confused. Are we talking about the duets or the other units?
These are only those 7 units that would be the workforce housing. The other.
There we go.
And what's the square footage of those? They all represent 1 square footage, right?
Yes, I can go. Let me bring up the presentation.
You good?
So we have a visual.
Thank you, Ray.
Something that I can relate anecdotally, this is sort of anecdotally, but my understanding is that generally the new house rate in in San Benito County at the moment is somewhere around the mid-8s to the high 9s. Those are larger square footage projects, of course, that we're talking about.
Charlie's raising his hand.
Okay, well,
Do you want
him to talk?
see, I thought we were referring to the entire project. I didn't know we were referring to the affordable or whatever as the 7 units. I thought we were talking about the entire thing.
No.
Thank you.
The fire chief, Charlie Badola, is raising his hand. Would you like?
Okay, sure.
Okay, Charlie, you have been unmuted, or you can unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Charlie. Are you there?
Yes.
I apologize. I was supposed to log in. I got running with kid stuff, and I apologize. I'm glad Abraham reminded me. So, yeah, what can I help you guys with?
Why is there a difference in the number of points of ingress and egress for this project and the Lico Greco that we just did last year, the year before, whenever that was? And the other question is, if something weren't to happen, whether it be this project wouldn't happen or Dividend Homes wouldn't happen, we're stuck with 1 point of ingress and egress. And I'm not understanding why it would work out that way, because we're not going to guarantee that any project will be approved and or built for a whole lot of reasons. And here we are just merely approving things that don't make a lot of sense.
We're not, but it's consistent now with what the fire code is. So before, they would have to build towards the future, and they'd have to have a second one with planks up, with a plank fence that said, as long as you're going to build up in the future and it's away from it, then you can approve it. But you need to build it when the homes come in. That was before homes had to be sprinklered. So now the code allows up to 30, and then you could grant that exception if all the homes are sprinklered. Well, all the homes are all now sprinklered now, so we could still grant that and give them that. There's a secure water source that's there also, so it's okay because the code does allow it to happen. So what we just need to do is make sure is there's no timeline when they need to connect it. They are sprinklered, and there's not a whole lot. There's under 200 homes, I believe, that's in there. So it could build it up to the future. The only thing we need to make sure is when they do build, or if they do build, or if some other project builds, that we say, yeah, it was built for the future. We need to connect to it. So like when Oak Creek happened up over there, they said, no, it wasn't built, but that's the way it was built for the future. That we stay strong and say, no, it's built for this in the future, to add that connectivity and act that second egress. They're a lot safer now that they're sprinklered. We have a good ordinance in California, passed a new law that has them all sprinkled with reliable water sources. So that's why we can do it. The code allows, and it's consistent from what we're doing in there also. So the other property did have it up and down, and they did have the third one up on the top, but that was built, the Lico property, Mr. Entrevilla's property, was built more for the connectivity for the older projects. So we needed to ensure that it connected up on the top, so they have a way out, if that makes sense.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, and I'll stay on too. I'm on too if there's any other questions on that.
On the rest of mine, and we'll go back to
I have
Commissioner
a
Pack.
related question. As you may have heard during the comments, we're discussing, this project is being discussed in terms of workforce housing. With your knowledge of kind of entry-level firemen's positions at, the fire stations in the county, the price point we've heard is a selling point of $565,000, dollars. Is that something that's going to be affordable for a new fireman who's just kind of starting out at one of the stations? Is that something that will be a workforce housing that's within the range that a new fireman can achieve for a house?
Yes. Okay, so it's a firefighter. And what's happening is all over the state and all over, people are not being able to work where they live. So it's hard to get them. And we're such a small community. It's important that we do attract and get the beginning firefighters that are able to bring their families or start off here and to live here too. So that gives them that opportunity to be able to afford it. So at that price range, yeah, absolutely, they'll be able to afford to live here. They're not having to go home and commute. We have an emergency, we page out, and we're able to utilize those people. And it's easier for overtime. It's easier for responding to off duty for emergency. So we're pretty fortunate, but there is still a few that did move out, but they're trying to come back because they see the value in it. It's beating them up going back and forth, commuting 2 hours away. And we're trying to keep all our public safety officers here, it's police, fire, and teachers. So if we can do that at the entry level, absolutely. And that price point range, I believe, was affordable. And we do have people that have already made contact with Mr. Entrevilla to say, what do we need to do to get going on that project, on those the ones that are catering to the first responders, teachers here in the community.
The other concern that I had was going back to Mr. Kaplan's comment about affordability, and we kind of leaving the lower end out in order to cover the middle. It's unfortunate that we have to pick, but that is one of my concerns, because for the people that are working locally that aren't making all that money, where do they go other than leave the county, go to the valley, or there are 10 families in a house somewhere else? So that is a concern that we should kick around. And then I just wanted to basically go over the entire comment and response from the Sunny Slope County Water District. There were a lot of volleys in there, and they had a lot of concerns, and basically the response says, well, the EIR covered it. They said, we don't have the capacity. The EIR says you do, and that is of great concern, because I think the operator would know better than Rincon and Associates what they're capable of processing through their system. So I'd like to hear and go over every one of those comments and the responses and why we think it's okay to just keep on trucking no matter what anybody says. And the other huge concern is the traffic. There's probably still people on 25 at this point. They probably weren't able to listen to this, but the EIR pretty much says everything is insignificant, and we just keep going, and everything's insignificant because it's a little piece at a time, and then we ignore the cumulative. At what point do we wake up and say, we just can't keep building and building and building and building houses until we fix our jobs housing problem? And at this rate, I don't think we're bringing any jobs to the county. And Rincon can answer that. I would love to hear that answer.
Yes. Eileen, are you on?
Yes, I am. What do you want me to address first?
Yet we have people that are now suffering 2 and 3 hour commutes. So what is insignificant, and at what point does it become significant? When it's an 8 hour commute to 6 hour commute? We're not able to keep up.
Regarding the EIR and the traffic impacts, what you're referring to is level of service impacts, congestion, those type of things. CEQA actually does not require an analysis of that anymore. They've switched to vehicle miles traveled, which is the total mileage that the residents would travel. And we did identify a significant unavoidable impact related to vehicle miles traveled. And we also analyzed cumulative impacts, which is the project in conjunction with the surrounding plan developments for both traffic and the utilities that you mentioned, as well as all other impacts that were addressed in the EIR.
Act significant and unavoidable?
For VMT.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then who's going to go over the letter from Sunny Slope Water? Because those were all relatively significant.
I'll let Eileen go over it. I do have the final EIR up on the screen as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Sunny Slope did provide a comment letter, letter 1, which we addressed in the final EIR point by point. They did have some concerns about the cumulative impact for wastewater service. However, when we did our analysis and compared to the available remaining capacity under both wastewater treatment options, there was adequate capacity at the both of the plants. We did also in the EIR address where offsite improvements would be needed, specifically for wastewater option 1, which I believe Sunny Slope was, they expressed a preference for option 2, and we did analyze both options in the EIR. The concerns were addressed in the final EIR. We made a couple text changes where they said that we had some information that was slightly out of date or just slightly inaccurate, but it did not affect the conclusions that we made.
Estimated wastewater generation?
So we based the wastewater generation off of the water demand estimate, and that came out to an additional approximately 9,000 gallons per day associated with the additional 29 residential units that we talked about earlier. So that's not the full project, that's just the additional units that weren't accounted for in the urban water management plan.
And for some reason I didn't mark it. I'm trying to find the comment where they said that they would be put at capacity if this were approved.
That, I believe, let me find that one. I think that was their comment about cumulative impacts and how this project plus all the other projects that are planned in the area would exceed the plant's total capacity. So we did acknowledge that in the EIR. But this project by itself would not put the plant over capacity. And it would be required to pay fair share fees and other fees associated with development of the project site.
I think that's where EIRs are falling short, because nothing is significant and it's just put down the road, and we're continuing to say yes and yes and yes and yes. But to what end? I have a lot of concerns about the project. I also have the concern that we said that we were going to have a special meeting for this, and we had all the commissioners lined up for it. And for some unknown reason, not requested by this commission, it was put on today's agenda without any consent. It just showed up when I picked up my packet on the 19th, or on Monday, rather. And I'm not understanding why that occurred, because obviously there are people here, and there are comments and concerns. And I'm hoping that that doesn't happen again, because we requested special meetings for a reason.
And also towards that matter, I mean, we do have one member of the commission absent. This is a matter of such controversy that it might be preferable to have a fully constituted, we have a sufficient quorum, but a full attendance by all 5 members of the commission would be a preferable matter for this.
I'd like to hear from Sunny Slope and actually hear what they have to say about their system that they run every day. And we have to start looking at things more closely, because obviously the EIRs are saying everything's ducky. And if you're commuting, it isn't. And those people that may or may not still be on 25 probably don't think everything's ducky. So, is there a motion to continue?
Well, first of all, Dana, do I understand that there were additional requests for public comment?
Yeah, there was a last-minute public comment requested after the public comment period by Julio Rodriguez. Commissioners, are you willing to listen to this comment?
Absolutely.
Okay, Julio Rodriguez, you may approach.
He came into the chambers in person. We'll honor his request.
All right. I guess that's the perks of a former planning commissioner. Well, no, I'm just kidding. I was get this tricky. Anyhow, no, I just have some concerns with the current project. First off, single family zoning, as you guys know, in California, it no longer exists. With I think it was SB 9. So there's no guarantee. People can buy these houses and basically turn them into fourplexes, and that's state law.
Actually, this SB 9 might...
We don't respond to public comments.
But like I said, as far as I'm concerned, building dwelling units in with single family zoning, that is law now. So why we're continuing down a path of single family zoning, or continuing down a path approving single family housing, it doesn't make any sense. Like I said, because real estate investors could buy these up, turn them into fourplexes, and that is state law now. Secondly, there really is no, the VMT comment. Yeah, that's the way state of California is going. We have to focus on infill projects with the city, or create mixed use developments. Measure Q failed, so you guys could create something. Could create a mixed use specific plan. Obviously, I can go on about traffic. I can just go on about the ag land. I can just go on sewage. But I guess the very poignant. To be very poignant is it doesn't make sense as of right now in the state of California to be approving more single family development, and that's just more so because there's a lot of risks right now. If we're better off approving mixed use or approving housing units that are already mid to high density. That's just kind of my final comments. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Public comment is closed.
Commissioners, actually, Richard Oliver from Dividend Homes has his hand raised via Zoom. Are you willing to take his comment?
Sure.
Okay. Richard, you've been unmuted. You can now speak.
I just pressed the unmuted button. My name is Dick Oliver. I've represented Dividend Homes and have worked on the Fairview Corners and the Gavilan College site for over 20 years. I just want to let you know that I'm here and was listening to all the comments, which I appreciate, and I look forward to working with Bill Lee And I'm looking forward to working with the county. And I just wanted to be sure that you knew that Dividend, the developer of Fairview Corners, which sold the property to Gavilan many years ago, is listening and wanting to be cooperative. Thank you very much.
I have a
Thank you.
question for Mr. Oliver. Well,
Sure, go ahead.
There's a question for you, Richard.
Mr. Oliver, yes, one of the sort of things that's in discussion right now, of course, is that the Lands of Lee project would create an easement access road for the Gavilan extension, but one of the things that we've heard in the comments is that this may not necessarily be so, or it may be contingent on the timeline of the development of the Dividend Homes project. Can you speak to us right now about what stage the Dividend project is at and what stage and what timeline Dividend has for its portion of the access road? Is that something that you can speak about at this time?
Yes, thank you very much. We'd be very pleased. We've been trying to start the project for the last 4 years. And we getting stumbling blocks with the city and the sewer system. And so we're proceeding, hopefully we'll get going. And so that will be one of the things that we do, so that will provide that secondary access as it's designed. And let me just, other comment I had is the biggest new employer you have really going is Gavilan College. And so we're looking forward to Gavilan, and they're in the process of getting started. So it's happening. And we hope to be able to proceed very shortly. Next year, we hopeful.
Thank you.
May I provide some quick clarity on the sewer question that you were talking about earlier?
Sure.
So there's two options that are contemplated, 1 and 2, and the 1 is the one you were talking about going up to Ridgemark, and 2 is going to the city plant. We want to go to the city plant. Sunny Slope wants us to go to the city plant. The city gave us a letter accepting the sewer, and so did Sunny Slope. But then when we submitted for the tentative map and the county RMA sent over to the city to confirm, the politics has shifted a little bit at the city, and the city actually didn't even answer to confirm or deny if they were going to uphold that. I think, as we know, there was an election a week ago, and it looks like the leadership in the city is going to change, and that probably will open the way for us to go into the city sewer plant. That's really where it should go, not up to Ridgemark. And if Drew were here from Sunny Slope Water, he would tell you that in an ideal world, he'd like to take the sewage from Sunny Slope and send it over to the city plant, because there's tertiary treatment there, which means more recycled water in the community and so forth. So the city did instruct the city manager to negotiate a contract with Drew to serve the college, Dividend, us, and Cielo Vista across the street, which has a batch plant that's failing. And he kind of dragged his feet until the election was done, so he knew who his bosses were going to be, and that process is now starting. So we anticipate, as we get into the new year, that'll get going. And you heard Mr. Oliver actually speak to that. Commissioner Pack, you asked, when is Dividend planning to build? Well, they're in that same limbo waiting to get the sewer approved. They have a tentative map from San Benito County, but without sewage, they can't. The last thing in conjunction with this, I realize there is one commissioner missing, but whether there's 4 or 5 present, it's going to take 3 votes to get this approved. I would ask, if at all possible, if you guys would consider voting on this tonight. We've heard a number of members of the community. I mean, you heard 8 or 9 people that spoke in favor of this. You heard some people that spoke against it. Obviously, there are considerations, but I would ask you to take that into consideration, because otherwise you have another hearing. All these people have to come back and continue and so forth, and they've taken time out of their evening tonight to come and speak both for and against this. So I would just ask for your consideration on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we're still here, is there any other public comment at this time before we close it and keep it closed?
Can they public comment twice?
Did you already speak on this matter?
There's no more public comment via Zoom or in the chambers.
Okay, public comment is closed. Back to the commission. Is there any comments, questions, concerns? Is there a motion on the table?
Well, the first, thing to consider is, there has been raised the idea of requiring the low-income housing as a condition to this permit. Do we want to talk about that or some of the other suggested conditions that have been raised by commenters?
I'm concerned about a buffer around the ag properties because people that are moving here from wherever they're going to move, and somebody has a horse, I think the county will be heavily involved, or whatever other animals that they're allowed to have on those properties. And I think an 8-foot fence is extremely less than appropriate to try to control that. I mean, it's basically an island, and then you've surrounded it by a vineyard and an event property, and then you have 2 5-acre zones. I don't think it was the best solution.
I might point out also that just because the current owner and the current usage of the land, those lands are not being sprayed, doesn't mean that's going to always be the case in the future.
A point of information just from anybody in the RMA or anybody with sufficient agriculture experience to speak to this. Generally speaking, what has been required as a buffer zone between areas of agricultural production and cultivation in residential homes in this county. Can anybody speak to that at the RMA? Just to.
I don't have a good example, Abraham.
The only thing that I know that there is a requirement in when somebody moves into a new home that's next to a agricultural area, that they sign off indicating that they know that they are next to an agricultural area. That's one of the requirements. I would though suggest that if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, and the Commission, that I like the fact that you're bringing in these topics and that you're discussing them. If it's okay with you, you can discuss these one by one and then determine whether or not you want to include these as a condition, say, for example. And even at that point, if you do that, at that point, it would decide to either make a motion to either approve it or deny the project
or continue it.
But you can go as a suggestion one by one and then decide whether or not. And then at that point, whatever outcome happens, if it gets approved, with certain conditions, the applicant certainly has the opportunity to appeal it, based on a certain condition or the actual action. Or if it gets denied, that's there's certain whatever action happens, there is an opportunity to be appealed, as we've known with previous projects, such as the one that we just previously saw with Betabo. So.
Well, my concern is just about this. Well, I have a lot of concerns. I know when the Water District came to us, they said everything's hunky-dory if they raise the 6th dam an additional 10 feet. If they do the other projects for a total of $350 million, everything will be rosy. Well, what if they don't? And one of their comments when they were presenting to the board on June, I think it was 14th, and they did say it, anyone can look at the tape. They said if worse comes to worse, we may limit farmers in Piscinas from pumping. We're an ag community, and I am concerned that if Mother Nature doesn't play nice and we have an extended drought with climate change, we don't know what's going to happen. We're going to sacrifice our ag community to house Silicon Valley, and so far, as far as I know, they're not working with us. They did the medium improvement. They approved the median improvement for the highway, the overpass. It wasn't the best they could have done. Are they going to bring a train to relieve congestion? I mean, at some point we have to have a conversation and just stop and think about what we're doing before we end up like them. And I bet the people that were on 25 today would request that we think about it before we just approve this thing. So we have the options of approving, denying, or continuing. We do have those options. And
you also have the option of adding or deleting any of the conditions of approval.
So do we want to have some continued?
And I would suggest that if there are proposals for modification, that they be made in the form of a motion and then voted on by the commission on a serial basis, and then to approve or deny the project as a whole. This would also require first certification of the final EIR.
Mhm.
And depending on the conditions and situation, that would also have to deal with a motion concerning the statement of overriding considerations.
Okay. So is there any discussion about what options we are going to take?
I would like to begin with, let's just kind of establish an itemized list of the conditions that we might want to be considering in regard to this project. The buffer zone is one. The requiring the low-income housing is a second. A third has to do with the impact fees that would be going towards down payments and instead the in lieu fees. That's the third condition. And I was going to ask Dana, or the note taker from the minutes, I believe there were maybe 2 or 3 other possible conditions that were raised by members of the public in the comments. I just remember the 2 relating to affordable housing and the 1 relating to the buffer zone.
Oh, and Mr. Pierce's comment about the bike thoroughfare through Maranatha.
Right, that was a suggested condition.
Well, apparently it was part of an agreement or a master parks plan. And I didn't see that on the map or any of the renderings that we've seen.
Okay, so those are 4 conditions that we are possibly considering to discuss. Do we want to begin with the discussion of the setback from the agricultural
Yeah,
area?
I think, I don't know if that can be a condition. I mean, that seems like you'd have to redraw the entire tentative map. Is that a condition that could be put upon it to put some sort of a buffer other than 8-foot fence? Because whether or not this owner sprays it, if he sells it, you spray vineyard. I mean, I work at a vineyard. We spray it pretty often. It's every 10 days because we're organic. If you're conventional, you can do it a little less often. But if it's a windy day and you've got 2 backyards directly behind it that we do have wind, that could affect the other houses. And boy, are they not going to be quiet about it, even though it is a right to a farm community.
Actually, to the chair, we've been going at this for 2 hours and a quarter, 2.25 hours. I would like to suggest for the members of the public and the member of this commission that we allow a brief recess for the purpose of biological necessity.
Okay. We will take a 10-minute break.
I so.
It's complicated to understand it all. Affordable housing, the restriction.
Okay, it is 8:29 according to that clock. I believe the 10 minutes has passed, so I will reconvene the Planning Commission meeting.
Mr. Chair, may I interrupt for just a moment? Michael Durkee, representing Bill Lee, fabulous staff. We've been working with them for years and really have to give an A+ to everybody that's been involved. In a gesture of cooperation, collaboration, I was hopeful that perhaps, and I don't know how you do it protocol, but I believe Joel would be able to lead you in that effort, that we might interject as you go issue by issue, if that is in fact the desire of the chair and the commission, that we may have some ideas for you that might help in that process. Didn't want to get in trouble by coming up here with a thought while you're in the middle of deliberation, so thought I better ask permission.
That works.
Okay.
If we have that option. Do we want to continue that discussion about the options that we have available to us?
About the possible conditions to the project?
Mm-hmm.
I would
Unless
suggest
there's
we
a
resolve that discussion, that section of the conversation, and then we'll see kind of where we are. So what we were discussing was the matter of a possible buffer zone or, so that was what was previously in discussion before the recess. That had been brought up by Miss Anderson, I do believe, was the one who spoke in regards to the winery and the vineyards and the possible buffer zone. So on that,
Thank you, Chair, to the Chair. Commissioners, none of the properties, Mr. Lee's property or any of the surrounding properties have the story value to grow crops other than like a winter wheat, something like that. The vineyard, before Mr. Lee bought the property as part of the deal, scraped his land, scraped his topsoil, and that's the soil they're using for the vineyard. So the good stuff's been taken away. So there are no crops and have not been crops on those neighboring properties. There is a horse. And so there's going to be a horse fly. There's going to be that kind of things, and neighbors are going to be mad. The interesting thing is, as Ariel did so well in her presentation, this county some time ago general planned this entire area, including the vineyard, to be this level of residential. All right, so yes, we are in that transition between Victorian home and rancher, and it takes a while, but the rancher is what we decided we wanted because the Victorian home burnt down. So we are in that transition between ag in that area and meeting the responsibilities the state has imposed to provide housing, and that's the pocket you chose. So the vineyard, all of these neighboring properties, they have the very designation that Dividend has, that Mr. Lee has. Dividend went forward with it, and you said yes, Mr. Lee is going forward with it. Hopefully you say yes. So with respect to those other properties, they are in an area that is going to become housing unless you revisit your general plan and get the Housing and Community Development folks up in Sacramento to allow you to do that and undo the housing on that land. All right, so the consequence of that is all of the things that you live every day. And I'm not suggesting that you're wrong. I'm just suggesting in a basket full of evils, those are the ones that you chose. And so all of this land is designated now for residential, and Mr. Lee is doing a better than average job in implementing that as compared to others who will also be doing residential. Why? Because you can't continue. You can grandfather, but you can't continue to perpetuate a use that's now been general planned out of existence, and it has been. So the 8-foot fence was a concession for livestock. There is no ag production on that property. And the vineyard across, they made sure that they put bigger lots right there. They distanced them from the 8-foot fence, and it's Mr. Lee's belief that those are more show grapes for the center than they are harvest fruit.
Okay, so the response is negative on the buffer.
So the response is that it would be impossible to do a buffer. I mean, we could do 10 feet. A fly goes 10 feet. We could do 150 feet. A fly is happy to go 150 feet. We could put no homes out on it except one where the park is at the toe of the project. And that fly is going to find you and bite you.
I think the greater concern is the potential of the vineyard for going into a non-organic cultivation and the potential of driftage of pesticides, herbicides, insecticides across the property onto the lands of Lee property.
Right, and I would agree with you, Commissioner Pack, but the fact of the matter is, and this pun is intended, the bull's out of the barn. You already general planned this property, and that spray pattern would cover the entirety of this project. There is not a buffer that you can say a spray will stay away from. It just won't. And so those were the decisions you made at the tip top, at the general plan, when you made the tough decisions. To now say we're not going to implement the BOSS, because the general plan is more important than the rezoning we're asking for. By state law, consistency is mandated. You have fine county council, they can confirm or deny that. So that spray, whatever it happens, is going to go over the entirety of the neighborhood. It's not going to politely stop at the edge of the curb and go, well, that's our buffer, so we better stay here, right? When that designation was changed, knowing the existing historical uses, including that vineyard, and this county decided to general plan this for what it did, and Ariel tells you that the zoning is consistent with the general plan that you've already adopted for all these properties with respect, I think your spray zone went away.
So your position is that there is really no mitigation that can be adopted against potential exposure of potential residents to pesticides, insecticides, and fumigants. that are used on the adjacent
Yes, there is
property.
one. Change your general plan back to agriculture. Take all this land, put it back to agriculture, kill this project. Because otherwise, the residents are supposed to be there, and according to you, the ag's not. So then to favor the ag and make the residential basically be non-existent is to go directly against your general plan. So put down a moratorium and take all this land back and re-general plan it agriculture.
Well, sir, my understanding is that the present designation of this land is as rural, and a part of this discussion is whether to upzone this land.
No, sir, with respect. The general plan sits atop the planning hierarchy. Then, within a reasonable amount of time, all lesser land use regulations must be brought into consistency with it. The general plan is not rural. The zoning is brought into consistency with your existing general plan within a reasonable amount of time in modern-day counties and cities on the wings of applicants. So when the applicant comes in, he or she then helps you with that consistency. But your top dog, the boss of the block in your land use county regulation, is your general plan, and it is no longer rural on any of these properties.
Ms. Goodspeed, at the current time, what is the zoning status of this property?
The zoning is rural, but the general plan is residential multiple, so I can go back to the beginning slide.
And the general plan takes precedence.
Yes, the general plan takes precedence.
It sounds like there's not really any proposed mitigation for this potential condition.
Okay. Is there a motion on the table, whether it be to approve, deny, or continue? Because it seems like we're at an impasse, apparently.
Do we want to discuss any of the other conditions? Anybody?
With respect to Mr. Lee and everyone else, I think if we continue, I prefer to continue. Now there's a lot of different emotions happening with this. There's a lot of concerns, a lot of questions. It's starting to, no one likes to continue, but there's definitely a lot of concern from the Planning Commission, and it's making me have concerns as well.
With respect, could we hear those? So we've heard the ag buffer. I appreciate that very much through the chair. could we hear the rest of the concerns? Because quite honestly, and I don't mean to sound whatever inappropriate way I'm about to sound, then deny. Then deny. All right? We brought the world, you've heard the project, you know its merits. If it's still not good enough, if it's still ag that should be more important in your eyes, fair. You're all good people. You're all stewards of this county. If in your judgment that's what should be done, then deny, please. And allow us to go through the protocol that all of these very kind and expensive people have put resource into bringing in front of you tonight, even though with respect to the chair's wishes, it should have been brought at a different time, as you had asked. So please, gentlemen, if you would, if you consider all the issues and you're not comfortable, nonetheless, the project's value has been presented. And we respect that if you're not comfortable with it, you have every right to deny it, and should. Tonight, please.
Wow.
Can staff make one point of clarification? My apologies. You had previously mentioned we were going to go through a few items. We just went through one, only the buffer. We were also going to talk about low income, then Luffy. Are we still going to be discussing those, or? I guess my point of clarification was the motion just on the buffer zone or on the entirety of the project?
Well, I would like to discuss the other possible conditions before we vote on the matter of a continuance or whether to approve or reject. So the comments that I would like to introduce in regard to the low income is that last year, some of the other members of the commission will recall, we received a report from the Resource Management Agency on our compliance with the previous RENA numbers. That generally demonstrated that while the county was successful in achieving its goals of the below market rate RENA goals of the past California housing allocation, we were highly unsuccessful at achieving the targets for the very low income and the low income housing. Basically, we were good at hitting the RENA numbers for the market rate, but now the Linco property, there was, my understanding is that there was a sort of a waiver of the low income housing requirements on that. I'm not entirely certain about the entire history of, the conditional usage in regards to housing and low income housing requirements over the past decade. But I am aware that granting exemptions from the low-income housing, it has a sort of a cumulative effect. We grant an exception here, and that exception then becomes a burden that sort of rolls on to the next housing development. And eventually, we have to ask the question of where we draw the line, or do we allow the exceptions to swallow the rule? And I think that is a very relevant matter in the discussion of this project, is whether, granting the exemption from the low-income housing requirements, whether there's sufficient overriding needs, or whether this is the point where we have to say that the county has set low-income housing requirements, and we expect those because we are under state mandates from the California Affordable Housing Act, and we, the county, are at risk of liability of litigation from the state attorney general's office if we continue in, if we are completely intransigent to the requirements of the California Affordable Housing Act, we risk creating liability of action from the California Attorney General's office.
Okay. While we're on this affordability, I would actually like to talk to a resident expert. If you could, Mr. Capron, if you could come up and discuss why you believe we're not helping ourselves by approving the current format for affordable housing.
I think that Commissioner Devon expressed what I was most concerned about. As I said, that was before this project came before you. Throughout developing the ordinance, my concern was that by setting a precedent, if you allow this on this project, generally speaking, developers do not want low-income housing in their projects. I think some of that is a misconception that low-income housing means crummy poor people housing, and it doesn't if it's built right and the low-income levels in this county are not so low. But I think the other thing that I wanted to address, I think, is the other item that Commissioner Pack brought up earlier about the in lieu fees proposed on this project. The in lieu fees normally would go to the county, and the county would use those for affordable housing. In this case, these aren't really in lieu fees. These are talking about taking some funds and setting them aside within the financing for this project. But affordable housing with deed-restricted homes is complicated because you can't, if you have a price range for workforce housing between 120 and 150% of median housing, you can't set your sales price for the 150% buyer. You have to have enough range in there that you can market them to a reasonable number of buyers. And what that means is if you have subsidy available of $4,500 as a down payment assistance, you actually can raise your sales price and still meet your marketing needs. So really that money is going to stay in the project and isn't necessarily going to increase the number of families who can afford it. And the same would apply to the 5% of moderate income housing. You'd have the same challenge there, a range of 80 to 120%. You'd have to set your sales price not at what a 120% buyer could afford, but some range below that. And that subsidy would allow you to raise that sales price essentially.
Okay, thank you.
Would the applicant or the applicant's counsel wish to speak in regards to this matter of our state-mandated low-income housing requirements?
Absolutely, thank you. Through the chair. Sir, we are in compliance with your affordable housing ordinance. Your staff has told you that we are. We're happy to do an affordable housing agreement along the lines of the proposal. Us being consistent with your ordinance have been derived from your desire to be consistent with state law. I think you're going to be okay. You have legal counsel here who will counsel you to that, but I believe the answer will be that if we are consistent with your ordinance, which I believe your county council has done an A+ job making sure you're consistent with statutory requirements, then you're going to be okay. But that's what we're here for, is to be in compliance. And we have worked with your staff over different creative ideas. We did focus on a community. We did focus on the school teachers and the firefighters and those folks. But I understand that there's a lot of communities, including people who don't qualify for any of this, who are still scraping to try to make ends meet. So our answer to your condition is whatever that you would like us to do to be in compliance with your ordinance, which includes the offer we've made, which is in compliance with your, we will accept.
Very good. Okay, is there any further discussion we want to have in regards to the low-income housing requirement, or shall we move on to the possible condition of the matter of the in lieu fees? Shall we move on to the in lieu fees?
Sure.
My understanding is that the potential in lieu fees are calculated at $540,000, which are being proposed into a down payment subsidy. Mr. Capron, as you are a member of the Housing Advisory Committee, can you speak to us about the, do you have numbers on the current amount of funds that the county has for affordable housing at this?
I can speak.
Yes.
I can speak to that. So we have not adopted an in lieu fee. It was brought to our Board of Supervisors in May. They postponed fully adopting that $30 fee until we brought back a revised ordinance, which is the next item you'll be considering, and then be brought to the board in December. So there's not an adopted fee at this point in time, but the Board of Supervisors have discussed and were in agreement on using the $30 fee once and adopting once the updated ordinance is brought back. As far as our existing funds, I believe we're right around $1 million. Little shy of $1 million.
Okay. So, essentially, with the existing funds, were the in lieu funds to be added to the affordable housing, it would basically be increasing our overall funds to $1.5 million or something like that, if
Correct.
it were allocated that way. Okay. So, I guess the question that I would like to ask my fellow commissioners is, what conditions, if any, do you favor? Or at this time, there's been this, we have the options of adding conditions. We have, well, first of all, are there any other conditions that we want to go through other than these three? There's what Mr. Pierce suggested, but that appears to have been an agreement that previously existed, or that Mr. Pierce claimed existed previously as a part of the agreement?
I'm not sure what he was exactly referring to. I did during our break pull up the adopted park master plan, and I could not find what he was discussing as part of our adopted master park plan. I do not see him in the audience anymore to get clarification on that specific comment. So
Valerie's not online.
I do not have a response at this time.
Okay.
Okay, well, we've discussed three possible conditions. Are there any other conditions that the other commissioners would like to raise or suggest?
Or is there a motion on the table at this point? I don't know. If we can get a motion and a second of some sort, we can go from there.
The decisive moment. Whether to move for a continuance or whether to move for a vote on the matter.
Well, what Commissioner Pack, you are proposing adding, or I think you're proposing adding a condition including low-income housing of some sort. How much?
Well, per the county's ordinances and requirements for low-income housing.
Right, okay.
So kind of consistent with our housing ordinances.
Okay, but in this particular case, do you know what that would mean in terms of numbers?
It's 7 units that were being substituted for the low income to the workforce as part of the code requirement of that 5%.
So those 7 units, instead of being workforce housing at a targeted, figure of 565,000, would instead be targeted as low-income units. Low income is calculated to the median income of the county. I believe the current calculation of the median income is $82,000. So basically, in terms of the formula of the affordable housing, there's one level that is, calculated towards a household making less than $82,000. And then there's the low income, which is 50%, so 41,000.
I can provide a little bit of clarity. So the 14 units that meet the moderate requirement of the ordinance is 81 to 120% area median income. And then the 7 units, if it's low income, it would be 51 to 80% area median income. I can actually bring up what those incomes would be per the 2022 adopted. I believe our area median income was like right around 108,000. But give me just a minute. I'll bring it.
And there was also the discussion at some point about striking option 1 for the sewage and requiring that if the city of Hollister doesn't accept it, then that's it.
Conditioning the approval on.
Option 2 for sewage.
On option 2.
Well, I'm prepared to move for that.
Oh, we're getting some consensus. Hey, it's almost Christmas. And you're still looking up those numbers.
It's not working on Google Chrome, so I'm using Firefox.
My
so-
understanding is that the very.
I just
low-
brought it up.
I have the numbers available.
Oh, okay. I just brought it up as well.
All right, so it depends on the number of persons in the household. So, and this is the most recent HCD figures released in May of this year. And so for a family of 4, the median income is $105,100. For a single person, that would, or a single one-person family, that's $73,550. That's the median income. Moderate income, which is a range between 80 and 120% of the area median income. The limit for that, for a family of 4, is $126,100. For a single person, it's $88,250. Affordability for home purchase is based on, in terms of a monthly mortgage payment, would be based on 35% of that divided by 12. So I'm not that adept at doing the math in my head, but.
Right, 30% of 105,000 is the figure?
Right.
That would be 30,200.
It'd be 126,000. It would be the moderate because it uses the average. So median is the base point, which then they define
Right,
moderate.
it's between 50 to
Yeah.
50%, 80% of median to 120% of median. So the 126,000 is the ceiling for moderate income. That's the 120% of median.
So I think, the first matter is, do we wish to add the condition of, compliant, of the 7 low income rather than workforce housing as a condition to this application?
So-
I move that we add that as a condition, as language to the.
So to modify the existing.
Yes.
Mhm.
Is there a second?
Well, I don't think we're at the point of actually making a motion
Well,
yet, but the concept.
He made a motion.
Oh, he did?
Well, yeah.
As I understood it, so the chair should inquire as to whether or not there is a second.
Is there a second for, could you restate that motion, basically?
Okay. Basically, the motion would be that we amend the language of the conditional use permit to include the requirements of the low-income housing per county low-income housing requirements, which my understanding is that the 7 houses that are proposed for workforce housing would instead be towards the low-income housing requirement. So that is what I am proposing.
Okay, and we're still leaving this open to other modifications, or is that the only?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second for that particular point? Without a second, the motion dies.
Okay. The next thing, okay, I suppose, is the matter of the in lieu fees. What are the sentiments of the rest of this commission in regards to, there's the proposal that the in lieu fees go towards this down payment subsidy, or there's the alternate proposal that the in lieu fees ultimately go to the county's affordable housing fund?
Can I ask probably the applicant or my fellow commissioners, how common is it to have an arrangement like this where the in lieu fees, or what we're calling in lieu fees, but aren't really in lieu fees are used for this purpose as opposed to going to the county. Is this like a one-off, or
Well,
is this something that's done?
Let me perhaps address that, because the county is evolving in its affordable housing requirements over time. At one point, the county required a 30% low and moderate income requirement. That was repealed altogether. Then the county, so for some period of time, there was no requirement. They were negotiated on an individual project-by-project basis. There was a development agreement for affordable housing for Santana Ranch that included 10% of the units would be so-called moderate, but the moderate income standard was not in alignment with the RENA standard for affordability. Then the LECO project, I think, had proposed another alternative for that project, and I believe Mr. Lee can address that LECO project served as the model for what they're proposing tonight. The county has yet to adopt an in lieu fee requirement. The in lieu fee would only apply to fractional units that would not be built within the project itself, and that would not be used internally for subsidies within the project. Instead, again, what's proposed here tonight is based on what was previously approved by both the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors for the legal project. And the question is whether to continue with that, at least for this project, until the county finally adopts the in lieu fee and the inclusionary affordable housing standards that, again, is going to be before you as the next item to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on, or not. And if you prefer not, if in the wisdom of the commission, you don't want to recommend to the board that what's been proposed be adopted, then it's within your discretion to either, to deny the project because it doesn't comply with what you think the county should be doing.
Thanks.
To clarify what Joel just said, when I started this, Harry had asked and requested that this be the format that we use for the affordable, because that was done with LECO, and wanted to continue that model. Obviously, Harry passed away. He's not here to to continue this through. We subsequently have done several things to give back to the community, because this does work a little bit better than doing 7 low units. And as a result, we've been able to do the smaller houses on the smaller lots, which gives back, across the fair market. And also we're able to do the mitigation agreement with the high school to give them a whole bunch of extra money. I guess, I just have to be realistic. There's only so many things that a project can do before you bankrupt a project, and it doesn't make fiscal sense. So, if we keep the affordable where it's at, we get workforce, we get the 10% moderate the correct way, we get the mitigation money to help build a new high school, and we get smaller houses and smaller lots.
Well, the motion for modifying the affordable housing agreement has, has died for lack of a second. So we're now on the matter of the allocation of the in lieu fees, of which there seems to be 2 options. And
So, again, what's being proposed is not an in lieu fee as it's being defined or proposed with the affordable housing. It is instead, it's a cross subsidy, if you will, within the project. So some some part of the proceeds of the market rate housing is being used to create a fund to write down down payments for a certain number of units. That's not really the same as the in lieu fee that's been proposed and discussed by the Housing Advisory Committee and will be before you later in the next item. So it's apples and oranges. And if you don't like the apples, then it's your prerogative to say so.
Wow. The applicant has previously expressed an interest in having a vote upon this matter this evening.
Well, I'd like to make a motion regarding the wastewater treatment.
Okay.
As it's been suggested, and I would like to move that we add as a condition of approval that the wastewater be what's currently being referred to as option 2, and that if option 1 turns out to be well, basically the option 1 is off the table. Is that sufficiently clear to serve as a motion?
The Planning Commission wishes to remove option 1 using
Right.
Sunny Slope as the sewer system, if approved.
Right.
Is that
And thus
council?
create
Is
the
that clear?
condition of the project gaining sewer access through the city of Hollister
Right.
as a condition for the approval of the project.
That's the only option that
Mhm.
would be acceptable.
Council?
We would agree to that.
So would you like to introduce that as a motion?
Yes, I move that we strike option 1 from the options available in the conditional use permit and only have option 2 remaining with regards to the wastewater treatment.
I second that motion.
Okay, so we have a first and a second for that part. Are there any other additions or deletions to the conditions?
To the chair, you have a motion, a second. It's appropriate for the commission to call the question and vote.
Okay.
Vote on this amendment.
All those in favor to this particular amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, that is 4-0 for that amendment.
Okay, are there other amendments that we're going to add to this before we make an overall motion?
The low income failed. There is no mitigation for the buffer zone. Unless the chair would like to suggest a mitigation or an amendment on the buffer
Well, we're
zone?
told that there is no option, so.
We have been told there's.
That was the mitigation, was a nope.
Yeah. Okay.
That was relatively clear. Very concise. I appreciated that.
Commissioner Rodriguez, do you have any amendments you'd like to suggest or conditions?
Okay, well, it looks like we're done making amendments. Is there a motion to do something with this?
Well, I move that we adopt the permit as.
Adopt the EIR and
Again, if you're making a motion concerning the project as a whole, the first would be to certify the final EIR.
okay, and the overriding factors for the unavoidable and significant impacts on traffic.
Well, that can be, again, done separately. So the first item is to certify the EIR.
Okay. Before we move to the matter of the certification of the EIR, there are the alternate options that were presented, the lower density and the higher density options. Do we want to have any discussion of that before we discuss the matter of the certification of the final EIR?
Can we pull up the map for option 2, please? Alternative 2? And what that would look like?
Yes. Let me. Just a second, and I'll pull it up. It was a very large EIR.
There are findings in the findings for the EIR, which include determination of whether the project as proposed or which of the alternatives best satisfy the objectives of the project. And while the commission is at liberty to consider alternatives, we would need to revise the findings as part of any findings for adoption by the commission. So if indeed you prefer, express a preference for another alternative, we would need to have the staff take the time to revise the conditions. The findings for certification of the EIR accordingly.
If I may, through the chair, Commissioner Pack, the general plan that sits on this property, I think, is 8.5 to 20 is the density range, and that alternative falls below that range, and so it would not be approvable without a general plan amendment.
But at the same time, I do have a question for Ms. Mahoney, if she is still on or with us, which is earlier during the comments we heard that the alternative 2 would be the more environmentally responsible. And I guess my question is the alternative 2, do we have any numbers on the difference of the traffic impact factor between the alternative 2 and, the alternative 1, the alternative 1 being the main plan, because, of course, Commissioner Gibson spoke towards the non-mitigable issue of the traffic impact. So I'm wondering if this lower density alternative, do we have any numbers on how that would change the traffic impact?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, I can respond to that. The significant and unavoidable VMT impact would not be avoided by either of the alternatives because VMT is a per capita metric. It doesn't really change if you reduce or increase the number of units because it's dependent on how many people are living in the units. So because it's measured per capita, there's still that significant and unavoidable impact under both alternative 2 and 3.
The lower density alternative would not create a substantial alteration to the traffic impact. Okay, that's. Commissioner Gibson? All right. So, the other commissioners, there's no particular appetite or interest in the alternatives? Or any sentiment towards that subject?
Well, it's not so much that there's no appetite for it as it is that if it's not going to result in mitigation of the unavoidable, traffic impact or VMT impact anyway, and then I'm not sure it's worthwhile.
Yeah, what's the point at that point?
Moot to the.
And the applicant wouldn't be happy either, and it wouldn't be in compliance with the general plan
Right.
according to the applicant's counsel.
So therefore, that alternative is not really one that should be.
So we
considered.
either adopt it with the amendment, deny it, or continue it to ponder
Well,
the stars.
To deny it, would we make a motion to deny it?
Yes.
Or would we move to approve it and then have a vote that failed?
Well, a failed vote to approve would be a denial.
But I'm just asking, is it more typical to make a motion in
I
the
can
positive?
I can address that question if you'd like.
Please.
So if you move to deny the project, you do not need to certify the EIR.
Okay.
If you are intending to approve the project, you have to certify it, the EIR. So in some respects, it's simpler. Obviously, the effect of a motion to approve that fails, and again, you have a 4-member board, and it would take 3 affirmative votes to approve it. So if you tie 2-2, it is tantamount to a denial. And then the applicant would be at liberty to appeal whichever decision to the Board of Supervisors, or if there's someone who if you approve it and there's someone who wants to appeal that to the board, they can do that also.
But if we make a motion to deny and we deny it successfully, having not certified the EIR, what happens with an appeal? When it goes to the Board of Supervisors with an uncertified EIR?
Then they have to certify the
Okay.
EIR if they're
Okay.
going to deny the appeal and
Okay.
approve the project.
I see.
So we have a preliminary matter of whether or not to certify the EIR.
Mm-hmm.
And
So someone want to make a motion and see if we get a second?
all right, I'll call the question. I move that we certify the EIR.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Okay, we have 1 aye. Are there any noes?
No.
No?
No.
Okay,
3-1.
3-1.
Motion to certify fails.
Without a certified EIR? It would be appropriate for you to follow with a motion to deny.
Okay, is there a motion to deny? Anyone?
I'll move to deny.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays?
Nay.
3-1. Motion to deny is approved.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the inclusionary housing presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll have our Assistant Planner, Stephanie Reck, provide a presentation on the inclusionary ordinance.
I'm assuming that we don't want to postpone this at this hour? I mean, that was kind of the point of having the special meeting.
Yeah.
Is there a willingness on the part of the commission to hear this item tonight?
Soldier on. I am willing to soldier on. I only speak for me.
Yep. Commissioner Way?
I would rather postpone it, but.
So we have one for continuing.
But
Well, one who is willing to continue, but if the other commissioners would
Yeah.
prefer to adjourn, I am
Well, it's just,
willing
you
to
know, I
accept
have
that
work.
preference.
You don't know?
I work in the morning.
Oh, you don't have a problem going?
If I may, this is the affordable housing final adoption of that has been back and forth with the Housing Advisory Committee, this commission, and the board, and this is the final step necessary to make a recommendation to the board for the board to approve it by, and their desire is to act on this with the current board before the end of the year.
And my response would be, that's why we asked for a special hearing for this item that took 3 hours and 20 minutes. There was a reason we requested it, why whoever it was overturned us, I would still like an answer to that, and that can be offline, why that happened.
I would like to state to the chair that if we do not manage to vote on this matter in a timely fashion, it will create a calendaring problem that will put the county out of compliance with state laws to implement an affordable housing policy. So we
Yeah.
would be exposing the county to liability.
Actually, I can correct that. Updating the inclusionary ordinance wouldn't do that.
Okay, that's good to know.
It's more
So-
just a request from the board to see this item before the end of the year.
Oh, very good.
So
No.
If it's not putting us into jeopardy with the state's requirements for
Okay.
inclusionary housing.
So we have,
And I realize this is impossible to say, but is this going to take 3 hours?
No.
or-
I
Okay,
could probably get this done within 40 minutes if you
Okay.
guys give me the opportunity.
okay.
Okay.
so do we have a
Acceptable? Okay.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
I'm okay with it. Okay.
I will unwillingly go along with it, but the next time you request a special meeting, please stick to it, or we will start continuing items that shouldn't have been on there. Thank you.
And if I could get the my screen pulled up on the television, please. Perfect. Okay, gentlemen, commissioners, thank you so much. Again, my name is Stephanie Reck. I'm the assistant planner with the County of San Benito. I'm covering duties of the housing coordinator, and I have been overseeing the Housing Advisory Committee since April of earlier this year. So I will be providing you with an overview of the updates we have implemented for Chapter 2103, the Affordable Housing Regulations. You should have both a clean copy and a redlined version in your packet. I will not be doing this via PowerPoint. We're going to go over it section by section within the ordinance. So, without any further ado, right here you'll notice our first edit in the chapter section. So staff added the word standard to the title section of 210314 to read as affordable by design standards to match the language in other sections of the ordinance like development standards and additional standards. Let me get to the edit, sorry. Okay. Staff changed the language in subsection G1 of 2103-001 findings to reflect that a developer would apply to pay an in lieu fee rather than elect to pay the in lieu fee. And then moving on to definitions. Oh, there's no edits in purpose section. Going on to 2103. Staff updated the definition for affordable housing plan to encompass the definition of the implementation plan. The definition now reads as a plan demonstrating affordable development in the county consisting of 6 or more units will meet the requirements of this chapter and should be submitted with a tentative subdivision map. These plans must demonstrate a comprehensive review of the implementation and administration of affordable housing regulations for the proposed development. These plans shall entail an in-depth overview of each phase of the development process, tenant screening and income qualification process, proposed legal forms and application, and other such information that is deemed necessary to complete an affordable housing plan. And then staff, here we go. Staff removed the definition for first approval and created a standard throughout the document where proposals are reviewed by the Housing Advisory Committee and submitted with recommendation to be reviewed through the Planning Commission, and who will provide their recommendations to the Board of Supervisors who have approval on all housing plans. Staff also included definitions for single-family housing, duplex housing, triplex housing, townhome housing, multifamily housing, and condominium housing. And so those are all the edits for the definition section. We're going to go to subsection E1 of 2103-004, development requiring inclusionary contribution. Okay. So staff added subsection E1, 2, and 3 Sorry, you can't quite get it all on the screen at the same time. Regarding the review process and approving authority. So the Housing Advisory Committee will review all housing, affordable housing plans for compliance with this chapter, and they will provide their recommendations to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will then review the affordable housing plan and provide recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, who has approval on all affordable housing plans and final maps. However, tentative subdivision maps are reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission, and then a county engineer will review and approve final maps that are then recorded with the Board of Supervisors. So this is going to be the process for all affordable housing plans. And so that was the update to that section. We're going to move on to 210305, inclusionary requirements. So staff updated the inclusionary requirements to reflect that developments of 6 to 10 units qualify for an inclusionary fee, and that developments of 11 or more shall provide inclusionary units, except when an in lieu fee can be paid for fractional units that are less than 0.7. All fractions that are 0.7 and above must round to the nearest whole number, resulting in an additional unit. Okay, so on-site requirements, 2103-006. Staff updated the inclusionary requirement again to reflect that an in lieu fee can be paid for fractional units that are less than 0.7, and that all fractions that are 0.7 and above must be rounded to the nearest number, nearest whole unit. Staff removed subsection B, 2, 3, and 4, which encompassed provisions for exterior appearance, number of bedrooms per unit, and minimum unit sizes. These provisions were updated and included in section 210315, development standards. And staff updated the on-site tables for inclusionary requirement. So these tables now reflect that 1 to 5 unit developments have no inclusionary requirement. 6 to 10 are required to pay an in lieu fee, and then 11 and on are required to provide 15% units and pay an in lieu fee for whatever fractional fee results. And you'll see a breakdown in how many units are anticipated per category. So on-site for sale at 15%, we have it broken down in moderate and low income. And then on-site rental is broken down between very low, low, and moderate income. I'm going to move right along here into off-site units, which is essentially the same change we've implemented for on-site units. So we've added in the stipulation about the 0.7 fractional requirements, rounding down if it's less than 0.7 and rounding up if it's above 0.7. We've also stipulated that on-site units must result in the creation of newly constructed units or units that were not otherwise planned for another development unless approved by the Board of Supervisors. And then again, staff updated the tables. So off-site requirements result in a 20% requirement inclusionary. And so off-site for sale is going to be 2 categories, moderate and low. And then off-site rental is, again, the 3 categories, very low, low, and moderate. Okay, so 2103-008, in lieu payment. Staff updated subsection B for fractional units to reflect that an in lieu fee can be paid for fractional units of less than 0.7, and that all fractions of 0.7 and above are rounded up. We also added the language to stipulate that a developer shall pay an in lieu fee instead of the language may pay a fee. Staff updated subsection C regarding the qualification for in lieu payment to stipulate that applicants can apply to pay an in lieu fee as opposed to electing to pay an in lieu fee. Applicants can apply to pay this fee if they can demonstrate that specific characteristics of the development site, including at least one of the following: septic systems or individual wells that are not connected to a public agency or regulated water purveyor, zoning which requires large lot development or is not within 10 miles of an incorporated city, make the site unsuitable for households at the required income levels. This was a concern of the board during the May 24th meeting, as the previous language stipulated that lack of access to services would qualify a developer for an in lieu payment. This language was vague and created a glaring loophole for developers. And again, included in a housing advisory committee to review the payment amount. So let's move right along to subsection 2103.009, which is development project approval. And we're going to go down to staff remove the language of first approval throughout this section to form consistency throughout the document. So you'll notice that first is deleted in a few sections. Staff added subsection E, 1, 2, and 3. This is the same thing we saw earlier on. It is the review process. So basically just explaining that the Housing Advisory Committee is the first reviewer of all housing plans. They submit their recommendation to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission then submits their recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, who has final approval or approval on the final map. And that the tentative map is reviewed by the Planning Commission, and that final maps are reviewed by a county engineer and then recorded with the board. Okay. So okay. This was removed for a reason. Limit this chapter. Oh, it's because it has to do with first approval. Okay, I'm going to move on to 2103.010, occupancy and continuing availability of units. The only update to this section is minor. In subsection 2, the language for the option to pay an in lieu fee was changed from elect to apply. Again, this is a standard that was created throughout the document to remove this as a potential loophole for developers. And we're going to move on to section 2103.11. Okay, the Housing Advisory Committee. So this update to this section is also minor. Once again, in creating a standard throughout the document, the Planning Commission has been included in the language to be a reviewer and to provide recommendation to the board for all affordable housing plans. Okay, so moving on to 2103.12, the collection and use of in lieu fees. So staff updated subsection A to include housing trust as an optional use for the in lieu fund, as well as using the fees to provide reasonable reimbursement to the county for impact fee waivers provided for 100% affordable units. We have reinstated the impact fee waiver, and I will get to that further down in the document. Staff updated subsection B and C to reflect, again, that the Planning Commission reviews and provides recommendation to the board for all funding proposals. This is specific to funding proposals. And in F, okay. As directed by the Board of Supervisors at the May 24th meeting, staff reinstated subsection F 1, 2, and 3 to provide impact fee waivers for all projects that are 100% affordable. You will notice that moderate income units will be required to pay 15% of their impact fees. Low-income developments will have to pay 25% of their impact fees, and very low developments will be exempt from paying impact fees. Okay, moving on to 2103.13, density bonus and incentives. Staff updated subsection A to reflect that the California Government Code for density bonus has been expanded and goes from 65915 to 65918. And so for subsection A, 1, 2, and 3, minor revisions were implemented in the language regarding percentages of housing per income group, and that these houses shall be affordable. And then staff included a provision for subsection B, which stipulates that concessions and incentives may be approved without any requirement that the applicant demonstrates to the county that the requested concessions and incentives result in identifiable and actual cost reductions to the project. And this was included to make the approval of concessions and incentives more streamlined. And staff removed subsection C to avoid being over-prescriptive in the density bonus section. All applicants will need to comply with the California Code for density bonuses, which will stipulate their period of affordability. Okay, subsection H. Okay, so once again, staff updated subsection H to reflect that the density bonuses calculations that result in fractional units of 0.7 or greater would be rounded to the nearest whole number, and an in lieu fee can be made for all fractions that are below 0.7. Staff updated subsection J, the definition for housing development, to include the construction of rental or for sale housing, including condominiums, into the definition. And then we updated subsection K3 to stipulate that the county may consider other concessions or incentives which are proposed by the developer. And staff removed subsection L, once again, as not to limit the concessions or incentives that can be provided to a developer. And so we're going to move on into 210314, Affordable by Design Standards. Staff explored implementing a robust standards section for affordable design, which was previously a reserved section. However, through discussions with the Housing Advisory Committee, it was determined that design standards will be ever evolving, and allowing for developers to work with planning staff on current standards at the time of submittal would be more fruitful. So as such, developers who wish to include affordable by design standards are encouraged to consult with planning staff to incorporate whatever current design standards are available at the time. And all affordable by design standards elected by a developer are in addition to the requirements of this ordinance, and they do not replace them. And so 2103-15 development standards. The development standards section was another reserved section that staff, through consultation with the Housing Advisory Committee, updated. So subsection A was included, which stipulates that inclusionary units shall be dispersed through the residential development to prevent the creation and concentration of affordable units within a development for all developments except self-help housing or multifamily housing. So these exemptions to disbursement were made as it was identified that a developer would have a difficult time dispersing self-help or multifamily housing through a market rate development. So subsection B was removed from 210306, updated and included in the development standard section. The standard stipulates that inclusionary units shall be of similar architectural style to that of their market rate counterparts, so that the inclusionary units are consistent with contemporary design standards for new housing. And so again, subsection D, C and D were the ones that were removed from on-site units section and updated and included in the development standard section. And it was determined that multifamily housing should average 2.2 bedrooms per unit, and single-family housing should result in 3.2 bedrooms per unit. And these averages were based off local development in the area. Subsection E and F were removed again from the on-site unit category and put into this one, and stipulate that the minimum unit size sizes for 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units in multifamily housing and single-family housing. And subsection G was added to stipulate that all permits for affordable units would be issued concurrently with or prior to that of permits for market rate units, and that the construction of inclusionary units shall occur concurrently with or prior to that of their market rate units. And this was added to ensure that inclusionary units were being built in a timely manner to that of their market rate counterparts. So subsection H was included to stipulate that any exemptions to this section can be reviewed and approved by the Board of Supervisors. And so additional standards has no edits. Staff explored removing this section with the Housing Advisory Committee. However, it was determined that should we wish to implement additional standards at a later date, it would be more beneficial to have this section available for us. And so Sections 17 and 18, monitoring and enforcement, have no revisions. So we're going to move right past those. And actually, that's the end of the document. So there's one thing I want to bring up really quickly. So various board members expressed interest in exploring workforce housing, as it is the San Benito County Council of Governments Board Recommendation number 1 to include workforce housing category in our housing element update. Staff did explore what it may look like to include workforce housing within our inclusionary ordinance. However, it should be noted that there is no uniform health and safety definition for workforce housing. So this is what it might look like if we added workforce housing into our ordinance. And so what we discussed, workforce housing, yeah. So at least in the 15% category, we were able to split up the percentage evenly. And so workforce housing actually only comes into play at 41 lots or more. And we actually have it right now at 121 to 150 AMI, but I'm going to speak a little further about that. So the COG recommendation stipulated that the workforce housing category should go up to 300% of the area median income. This was based off a case study conducted in Lake Tahoe, where they implemented a workforce housing category that went up to 300% of their area median income in an effort to include more of its workforce in the category. This was due to the fact that the majority of Lake Tahoe's workforce were employed by hotels and that it was very specific to the needs of their area. Our neighbor, the city of Salinas, included workforce housing in their inclusionary ordinance, and they have it defined as workforce income households whose annual income adjusted for household size does not exceed 160% of the area median income. And so for this example, like I said, we're looking at workforce housing as being defined as 121 to 150% AMI. However, it should be noted that at this time, staff do not have an accurate understanding of the percentage of AMI that workforce housing falls into for our jurisdiction. Additional studies would have to be conducted to gather this information. So, staff recommendation. Through discussions with the city, staff find that it would be beneficial to work in collaboration with the city to accurately define workforce housing for our jurisdiction before it can be included in our affordable housing regulations. This would require the use of consultants to conduct a study in the area. The issue is, if we define workforce housing right now as 121 to 150%, we may exclude a large portion of our workforce, i.e. if our sheriffs or firefighters fall within 160% of the AMI. So if we hold off and conduct these studies, we could more accurately define and provide for workforce housing within our inclusionary ordinance. So furthermore, staff recommend that the Planning Commission recommend the approval of Chapter 2103, the Affordable Housing Regulations, with the updates presented today to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Are there any comments, questions, or concerns from the commission?
No.
Yes.
Commissioner Wade.
I think the targets are pretty low. I would rather see more than 15%, to be quite honest. I'd be comfortable with 20, but having said that, I still think this is better. It's an improvement over what's currently there. So I'm inclined to approve it, but I welcome additional discussion.
I would just like to say that off-site is at 20%.
Yeah.
On-site is at 15%.
Yeah, I did see that, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before we get to any modifications, let's see if there's anyone still awake on Zoom. I see Seth's awake, but is there anyone on Zoom that has any public comment?
No public comment via Zoom.
Seth, as the only man standing, do you have public comment?
Thank you, Chair Gibson. That was amazing that Stephanie was able to condense what we spent many, many months going over in detail with staff. She's been great to work with, and also your county council, Joel, was at most of those meetings also. I really appreciate their work. I had a specific comment and then a general comment. The specific comment was something that goes back to, like I said, I've been through this from sort of 4 or 5 years ago till now. And I went back and looked because something jumped out at me that I hadn't noticed before. And this is on, and maybe you could bring up the slide for the on-site for sale inclusionary requirements.
I have it pulled up.
And if you look at that, it's requiring 10% moderate units and 5% low-income units. But if you look at all of the other charts and even look at the upper part of this chart, the rationale we were using is we were kind of going 50-50. But then if it was an uneven number, we gave that to the moderate, but otherwise we were splitting evenly between them. And like I said, that's more consistent with all the other breakdowns we have for other types. It's also, if you go back to the previous ordinance before it was amended, on this same chart, it included moderate, low income, and very low. And it was 5% moderate, 5% low income, and very low. And we eliminated the very low, thinking it's not really probably appropriate to be building single family, very low income homes for various reasons that I can
stipulate to as an affordable housing builder. But we took, instead of taking the 5% low income and putting it, or excuse me, the 5% very low income and adding it to the low income, we added it to the moderate income. So I think it would make more sense to have those be 50-50 at 7.5 for each of those.
Yeah.
And if you look at the up above, at 25 to 31, it's 2 and 2. If you were to take 40 units on this chart, it would be 3 units, but 41 units, according to this formula, would only require 2 units. So it just doesn't make logical sense. Whereas if you were splitting it 7.5, it would. The other thing that I wanted to comment on is I very much support finding ways. I think the county desperately needs to find ways to create workforce housing. And I think that if we're doing that, we shouldn't be doing that by saying we're going to do 15% and then take some of the low and moderate away. And I believe that we can do some of this, maybe not just through our affordable housing ordinance. When this was first proposed, we had that section on affordable by design. And I think I was a lot of the reason that got zeroed out. I spoke out strongly against that. And I wonder if you could indulge me for just another minute.
Absolutely.
Okay. And my thinking on that has changed. Although affordable by design and the language we put in here, we don't want that to replace some of our other requirements. We want it to be added on. I think builders can build workforce housing on smaller homes, on smaller lots. They're not going to do it if our zoning allows them to build a 6,000 square foot lot with a 3,000 square foot house. They're going to do that every day of the week. So I look forward to looking at our general plan next year and finding some ways to do this. It doesn't take away from our affordable housing requirements for low income and very low income and moderate income buyers, but expands upon that. So we're building the housing that our residents need, not what commuters need.
Yeah. I agree. If I'm still around, we'll take a look at that.
All right. Thank you very much for the extra time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Seth.
Okay.
We do have one person via Zoom.
Okie dokie.
Valerie Eglin, you've been unmuted.
Yes, Commissioner Gibson. I'm still listening, but I couldn't get the picture to expand to raise my hand quick enough. So thank you, Seth. Had very good things to say. I think all the work that you guys have put into that, and I've been privy to some of it along the way. And it's very exciting to see that, like you were saying, building houses for what will support our community, and not having people drive in to clean our houses from Modesto. I mean, it is on your shoulders, and you've done a beautiful job, and thank you so much.
Is there any other public comment via Zoom?
No other comment via Zoom.
Fantastic. Public comment is closed at this time. Back to the commission. Are there any other thoughts, or is there a motion to approve with the changes that Mr. Capron suggested regarding splitting those percentages half and half?
I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Fantastic. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Now we need a motion to adjourn. I'm a little punch drunk. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Have a very good evening, or what's left of it.
Thank you, commissioners.
Been up since 4:30.